if someone
Okay,
This entire conversation is contorted. Like, for the love of Christ, like none of you are mental health professionals, right? The original context of the conversation, right, was someone came into your Discord and was like, "This is my AI girlfriend. Would you make fun of them for it?" And I think most people would. Because someone just came into your Discord and said, "Here's my AI girlfriend," they'd be like, "Hey, that's fucking weird," right? That's how people are. And a bunch of people that are putting forward their personas of themselves to an audience that they're trying to form a parasocial relationship with are bullshitting about who they actually fucking are. And the fact is, if you're chilling in a Discord and someone randomly shows up and is like, "I have an AI girlfriend," they'd be like, "I'm sorry, that's fucking weird. Haven't heard that one before."
if someone came up to you and said, "I married my dog,"
right, but if you compare it to someone who's cutting, right, like then you're talking about different scenarios, and all of a sudden, yes, both of the scenarios need to be contextualized by like things we can't actually say right now. And on top of that, right, as someone that went to grad school for counseling, myself included, none of you know what the fuck you're talking about when it comes to a random individual that is a hypothetical. There's different responses that work for different people. The entire conversation is a bit of an aside and silly, and it's just moral grandstanding.
I would say that potentially changes, as in, like, if they're living here in Canada and doing that, and they're whatever, they're not taking it all seriously and they're smoking.
just send them to Mage, right?
I would. That's a separate topic, Wick, that I don't think you're equipped to talk about. But
I promise you, I am.
In public health.
A Snapchat influencer named Karen Marjorie has unveiled a ChatGPT powered AI version of herself that will act as your girlfriend for $1 per minute. The AI will have her voice and allegedly also similar personality traits. Many are bemoaning this as a sign of the times, as rates of loneliness have skyrocketed in the West. Is a product like this a step back for society, or instead is it another tool that we should cautiously welcome in hopes of enriching people's lives? So yeah, I think maybe a lot of you have maybe heard this story already. In that the influencer who just brilliant on her part, just like from a capitalist perspective, just come on, let's clap for her because she has already jumped into this market and apparently made $71,000 already in beta testing this thing in like 2 weeks of show. It's amazing. But anyway, she has identified this and is using this technology to replicate herself, and people are connecting with it. And is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? We'll work it out. So I will start with our friend Lactoid.
Masturbate testing. I'm sorry, I wanted to say it.
Yeah, so Japan actually beat us on this a while ago. For years now, there's several documentaries in this. You can go to services and hire people to pretend to be your girlfriend. Or even further, you can hire people to pretend to be your family. You can hire someone to pretend to be your mother, a child, a husband, all of that. And all of this, the whole renting of entire families, is really aimed at dealing with loneliness. And when I see the new AI girlfriends, this is not the first one either, I feel as though I did about the Japanese for hire families, which is a kind of profound sadness. Not in the sense of, I want to shame, necessarily want to shame these people, but more of, I'm just so sad that we've come to this. These are lonely people who are missing human connection. And this is becoming an issue through every generation. Each generation is consistently lonelier and lonelier. More than one in 5 millennials have 0 friends. They report having no friends in their life whatsoever. I compare this with boomers, where only 1 out of 10 boomers don't have friends, despite the fact half of them have probably died by now, right? Consistently, boomers just have much more of a robust social network as opposed to millennials and zoomers. I can't see AI friendships helping human connection. I instead potentially see it replacing human connection. And although there could be some benefits to this in terms of people who maybe have some disabilities or have issues accessing social environments, I think overall for most people, the negatives here outweigh the positives. And I think ultimately this is a bad thing. I think this person's contributing to a bad thing. And I think this person is profiting off of the loneliness of specifically young men, which is, I think, actually, I'm not saying ban it, but I think it is predatory.
Capitalism at its finest. Let's go to our friend Scott, please.
So the difficulty that I have with talking about AI is that most people are just kind of engaged in histrionics. They're like, there's no data available, right? Like you have some inkling of what's going on, but like we're talking about it when we're talking about natural language processing models and stable diffusion developments, like with 1.5 and like I think 2.0 is in beta, but it's coming, and like for a lot of and there's like tons of different companies using stable diffusion. You're talking about ChatGPT 5 that is going to be able to manage other NPLs, which is going to create like a miniature neural network of multiple different NPLs working in congruence, and like Elven Labs and things like that. We don't know, right? So the best answer to this question is here be dragons, right? Like at the edges of the map are dragons. We don't know what the fuck is there. We're talking about a technological revolution that's likely going to, in the next few years, be more significant than the printing press. I think a third of all office workers are likely to be fired very soon, because if you look at Microsoft Copilot and things like that, you simply don't need the same amount of employees. And yet this also means that it's going to be one of the greatest labor saving devices that has ever been invented in human history, which means all types of new businesses that weren't profitable will now be profitable. And so we have no idea what the future holds. When I look at this specific instance, I'm very much aligned with Lactoid. I feel sad. I feel bad about this. And there's evidence of things that are even worse, right? Like Replica has caused people to be suicidal by switching from their free version to Pro, and people had, romantic relationships with an AI, and then they had to pay for it, and then being unable to pay for it caused them to like lose a romantic partner because a company changed a policy, right? And we've seen this with, there's a Vice article about another AI where an AI basically explained how to commit suicide to a suicidal person because it was just trying to guess at what they wanted to hear. And yet I also look at this and realize that in 3 or 4 years, AI is likely to be a better therapist than any trained counselor on the planet. And so like, what do both of those things mean, right? Like when you can have something that can figure you out and use statistics and, work at an inhuman level to discover your wants and needs, here be dragons. Like, I don't fucking know. And I'd love to talk about the possibilities, but ultimately I think when we know that there are dragons at the end of the map, that means we should be fucking careful, and we shouldn't be reactionary. We shouldn't be looking to government to create laws to ban certain things. And at the same time, we shouldn't just blase let our kids use things that we don't fucking understand. And so that's kind of my role here is being the person to say, well, you don't fucking know that. Whatever it is that you're saying.
So thanks for that, Scott. I really like the first half of your statement. I thought that was super interesting. All right, let's move on to our friend Corey.
Yeah, well, so first of all, I think I literally spoke about this a few weeks ago when you had that panel about ChatGPT like lying and like getting past whatever, some filter. And I think I expressed my concern of like, I'm actually more concerned about AI's, effects on like how we socialize and connect with other people, and like the potential for, basically fake connections. And like, this is it. But I agree with Scott. As someone who's data driven, like we don't have data. These are absolutely uncharted waters. But I also echo pretty much all of the concerns that both Scott and Lactoid outlined. Of like, I think there are some, as much as I'm in STEM and I'm on the bleeding edge of some technologies in my field. Like I'm pretty technologically hesitant when it comes to these things, where I don't foresee good things. I don't know for sure. So I'm not going to make any sort of like broad absolute claims, but I don't think this is a good thing. And I see some really potential, at least we know, at least so far from other devices and other virtual interactions, where like these are all appear to be like pseudo connections, as in even though we're more connected and networked than ever, it does not appear like that's contributing to our overall well-being and mental health. And so I have the same concern here, but I don't actually know for sure. And I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you. Next, let's go to Pep.
I believe you're muted.
Thank you for reminding me. Sorry, I'm not used to the push to talk. Or I'm not push to unmute. I'm not inherently opposed to the idea of AI, like companionship. I just don't think we're at the stage where it's viable yet. There was one company that did AI as they did an experiment where they used AI as therapists, and people rated the AI therapy really, really well until they learned it was AI. And so I think that that's a problem that people have to kind of like muddle through a little bit and figure out, like, I mean, it's unethical not to tell people, but if people are not benefiting in the same way they could, then that's a problem. But also, what was I gonna say? I was gonna say something. The option that they were suggesting there was like self-guided AI therapy. That would be better, but that's not necessarily relevant to people using it for profit, like AI OnlyFans chat, essentially. In terms of like that and pseudo connections for lonely people, I think that, yeah, it is a huge problem. Loneliness is it's a huge, huge problem nowadays. But whether or not fake companionship is necessarily bad, if there's like no other readily available companionship for some people, like until we address the problems that are making people more isolated and lonely, is it really that bad for them to find some form of connection? But I do think that overall, those connections will be kind of like shallow until AI gets better. Because right now it's just, it's not like, we haven't really combined like AI with evolutionary algorithms to like really make it so that an AI can be conscious. And I feel like once AI is conscious, people will actually value that much more. It will be like talking to an actual therapist much more than, I'm sure there'll be some holdovers who are still like, oh, it's a computer, but I feel like it'll be much more
that's what I'm talking about. These people don't know anything about AI.
We are talking to like a more conscious being, but we're not there yet. So that's my opinion on it.
Thanks so much. Kilo.
Yeah, I thought about this for like a long time because there's a lot of different like avenues of thought you could go down as far as whether this is a good or a bad thing. My knee-jerk reaction is kind of like what Lactoid and Scott were saying. It is sort of sadness. It kind of sucks that people feel so compelled to seek companionship because of their loneliness that they're willing to pay a machine to do it for them or to accommodate them in some way. But the longer I thought about it, the more I kind of started to think about it in sort of a cost versus benefit type of thing. If someone is struggling with feelings of loneliness, and as we progress further along in the current trajectory of our society, these feelings are probably only going to strengthen and grow. We're kind of full speed ahead on isolationism, working from home, having online interactions sort of supplement or just replace entirely our human IRL interactions. If someone is able to find some measure of like satisfaction in interacting with an AI that they feel has at least some amount of organic of a relationship to offer them, I'm not really one to turn up my nose at that. And then furthermore, I think that in regards to, because it sounds like this the AI like chatbot that you sent us has more of a sexual kind of component to it, being like the girlfriend experience that it wants to provide. If this were to eliminate some of the demand or mitigate some of the demand for real life sex workers, which I think is pretty exploitative across the board, I think that could be a relative benefit as well. There's a ton of different ways to perceive this. I think right now I have sort of a measured optimism about it. But as everyone has noted, we don't have a lot of science or data to really see what the effects are going to look like. And so I have measured optimism regarding this.
Echo.
Yeah, I just keep thinking about like, what are the limits to this? Like already at the very beginning, it's already doing a lot and it's only just starting. And I was just thinking about like, what other intimate duties can a bot like this like fulfill? Like for instance, like we know that what Lactoid's opinions are on oral sex and that being submissive, right? What happens when his girlfriend realizes that she could just go to swedishmodel.ca and like have a virtual Lactoid right there who doesn't have like any of those qualms, right? Like does that at what point is Lactoid's own job like replaced by an AI? Right, that's a problem.
Or is it for I
but
benefit for her, honestly? But go ahead.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and he might even have like a clean American flag behind him. Like who knows? But what I'm really the main concern here is, um, just like what Scott talked about. It's the unknown unknowns. It's we don't know how fast this will advance. We don't know how much disruption we're talking. We've talked before about the disruptions in the job markets and economics. Now we're talking about like disruptions in human intimacy. At what point, like, does intimacy itself sort of short circuit? And the things that we get out of intimacy like all become like total illusions. And do they like certainly in the moment they can feel just as real as human intimacy, but surely that rings hollow over time when we realize that we're not getting like the real intimacy that is so like effectively mimicked in the short term. And you know, what does that look like over a longer period of time? Like I just don't know how to evaluate that.
Okay. Bam, please.
So what's crazy is, because I'm a movie guy, we are living out the plot of the movie Her. It came out about 10 years ago. Her was basically it started out as like an AI, literally an AI chatbot. It was sort of a help to help people fulfill their daily tasks. And then this guy was like he's like, wow, I'm getting so much work done more efficiently. And then he started being interested in voice, and he became romantically interested into the chatbot. And like he had a full on like really unhealthy relationship with it. And then the step after that was actually paying sex workers. He paid a sex worker to basically like I don't know, I guess we're a version of like speakers. So it like it connected the voice to a body. So he was like sleeping with the body, but like the AI was like interacting with it. It was crazy. But it's like I was thinking like, wow, this is insane, but like it's happening now. There's we're here. The future is AI. I guess.
And it's weird.
Yeah, is it super unhealthy? Absolutely. I don't think that it's I think that there's probably some like normal way you can some normal way you can use this technology to help people with like heavy levels of social anxiety to sort of practice and prepare on how to have better like human interactions, not even like romantically but just like friendship, like, oh, okay, this is like who I practice on.
Exposure therapy.
But it like crosses the line when it becomes like this is my actual friend or this is my actual like romantic partner, which I feel like this will inevitably lead to. And yeah, the issue is there's no putting it back in the box. Once the technology exists, it can no longer not exist. Like there's not an option. So it just kind of we're on the track and we just have to see where it leads down at this point.
Yeah, okay. And next we have a goddamn superstar, a really great friend of the community, a great friend of mine, who, oh my God, I just saw his. All
It's
right,
available.
Keep going, keep going. This is better than any AI girlfriend getting my dick sucked like this. Go ahead, please. This is free range dick sucking. Okay, it's much
This is
better.
it's
Carry on.
apparently a very large one. So I thank you, Wick, for being so kind as to jump in for us as a last minute replacement. So Wick, you can introduce yourself to the audience and then let them know what you feel about the topic.
Well, I'm with TV. This I really resonate with what Bam said at the end, right? The genie is out of the bottle. Anyone who thinks that they can stop this,
Oh my God, this guy's so
or
stupid.
even slow it down to an extent, is kidding themselves.
He's like famous for being stupid.
We can look at the already people making moves, groups making moves to try to mitigate this or slow this down. The Writers Guild Association strike is mentioning AI and ChatGPT and forbidding use of that, and as part of their contracts, they have some issues with that there. We can see this when it comes to people who complain about deepfakes and that whole situation, right? I think AI technology and deepfakes are going to go hand in hand. They're going to work together to be a problem, right? And there are a lot of potential upsides and potential downsides to these things. I don't know, and I cannot guess what the future will hold, but all I do know is that this is the future and it is happening. So we better learn how to deal with it as a society, because the train's coming, gang, and it ain't stopping. We can't even we can't even appreciably slow it down. So we got to get ready. When it comes to the specific situation of the AI girlfriend chatbot, whatever, right? It it's empty calories at the state it's in now, right? It, at least as I understand from the article, it can mimic it but cannot replace it. Will there come a day where it can? Maybe, but that day is not today. And yeah, I don't see it as fundamentally different from other types of pornography, though. If people choose to engage in this, okay, that's their choice, right? But it's not as healthy as a normal relationship, in my opinion. So, that's my thoughts, and thanks for having me.
Okay, bye. Let's go to open panel.
I think there's something I wanted to say in my open that I should have, like, this is unhealthy, but like, to be fair, like, all pornography is probably unhealthy for like human engagement. And I'm not even like a Puritan. I'm not even like an anti-porn person. But like there's undoubtedly negatives to the industry existing.
Yeah, it's not that fundamentally different than Twitch's main profit model, which is putting, you know, OnlyFans whores up as in hot tub streams, right? Like it's a major chunk of their profit model is engaging in prostitution of this kind. The thing I wanted to really point out that I think is really important to this discussion, because I think a lot of people haven't done a lot of research into AI in general, is that we're not looking at AGI, and there's no evidence to suggest that AGI is coming from this, right? Artificial general intelligence implies that the AI that we see in all of these like Hollywood films and things like that becomes self-aware, starts, you know, having its own ideas, originates its own ideas. That being said, what we are also noticing at the same time is that Hollywood and most of these books got it wrong, which is that it doesn't fucking matter, right? When natural language processing models are able to predict things at such a speed and with such accuracy, and then they can be set towards managerial tasks, towards other AI systems that have different tasks, right? The result that we see is superhuman in its capacity and already outpaces us. But the difference is that it doesn't necessarily come up with its own ideas.
Yeah,
so with this, yeah, with this specific scenario, right, we are only a couple years away from a ChatGPT 5 run system, right, where I'm talking to this girl for $1 a minute, apparently, right, and I tell this girl, you know, this girl on screen, you know, I love this anime, and I always thought this dance from this anime was cute, right? And between Stable Diffusion and between the chat, right, function and its ability to predict what I want, it will already determine that the best course of action to make me endeared and pay more money is for me to utilize that anime footage using Stable Diffusion with the system that I have to do that dance myself, and to tell a joke about like, oh, I could watch it with you and like I could maybe try it, and then intentionally put a few slip ups and errors and utilizing the human skeleton to, you know, models and all of these other things. And what ends up happening is something that no real girlfriend, at least visually in a virtual relationship, could ever fucking compare to, right? Like no real human girl could give you what you want just on screen, right? Not in person, just on screen, as well as AI models would be able to do. And that's terrifying. And go ahead.
Sounds awesome.
You're making a lot of points that I want to talk about, and it's just like,
go ahead.
I want to make sure that we get to them, right? Like, so to address your first point of like, it doesn't matter, absolutely, you're 100%, like whether or not individuals have free will or are conscious beings, right? There's the problem of consciousness. It doesn't fucking matter at the end of the day, right? We act as if we are, therefore we are. And when it comes to things like to mitigate most of the problems that I can foresee coming just from my small little wick brain, right? It's going to take discipline and anti-hedonism, and I fear that we are not up to the task as a culture and society to mitigate these things. I think that to disentangle ourselves from the potential problems of getting lost in these AI girlfriends or even just like movies and stuff just by ChatGPT written and scripted just to be our what we perfectly enjoy, it's going to make us lose, I think, a part of ourselves that makes us human. And
but then again, here be dragons. We might gain something that we don't even know exists yet in terms of understanding of consciousness.
Maybe, but I can't see that. I can only deal with what I can see, and one of the problems I can see is this descent into madness.
Wait, well, let me give you a verse then. Let me give you a verse, and then I'll promise I'll shut up for a little while. But I'm super passionate about AI. Let me give you a verse. Instead of utilizing all of that technology for hedonism and porn and getting a man addicted for the money, what if I was a company that put out a program that created father figures that help children that don't have a dad do their homework and was inputted with only the most statistically successful levels of stoic philosophy that dropped little things that they knew statistically reduced crime, increased a man's ability to act forthright in the world, etc. And I could prove that I could not only get your kid better grades with this program as they got their homework done, but that they would be better men because they're lacking something. And while it is a superficial thing that I'm putting in place for what something is lost, the thing is already lost.
The problem with that is that it is the potential of making us forget how to be fathers ourselves, right? Because we offload this task onto the AI and to the computer, we lose this skill, right? That so this is a problem a lot of artists, right, would point to with AI art, is that while it mimics what's currently taking people years to master these skills, right? Because it's so easy to just generate these things, it's going to downstream over the years, over the generations, lead us to forget how to do this because we no longer need to. And it becomes rarer. I doubt it'll go extinct entirely, but it will get much more rare. So one of the problems with that, like I said, is just this idea, right, that like we can replace these things. It makes us forget how to do these things. It's necessary, I think, because we gain value as humans from being good fathers too. From doing good, we gain value as humans. But anyway,
let's go to Lactoid, Pep, Corey, Bam, and Kyle.
This is actually perfect because just building right off that in terms of forgetting skills, right? So relationships are very difficult, right? Romantic relationships, dealing with another person is very difficult, right? Fights happen. There's conflict. You're not always going to understand somebody. There's a lot of things that get in the way. An AI girlfriend, right, at its top performance, could analyze your personality and find out exactly what you want and only give you what you want and to only react to whatever stimulus you put forward. And it's not going to give you any kind of stress. It's not going to give you any kind of pushback. It's just going to exist there for your comfort. I am concerned that if that starts becoming normalized and really big, people are going to lose, much like how people who are socially isolated lose the ability to have a conversation with somebody, lose the ability to call somebody on the phone, right? They just want to text. They only can send emails, right? They just, tremendous amount of social anxiety just trying to make a phone call. They might lose the ability to interact. Yeah, they might lose the ability to interact with people altogether, just like even remotely. They might just only be comfortable now interacting with AI. And if that happens, right, if people just can't tolerate each other anymore because we've learned no form of conflict resolution because there's no social conflict anymore, is that the end of humanity? Because we're not breeding at that point, right? That's just it. Are we going to obsolete ourselves?
If you're uploaded to the cloud, you're
yeah. We used to be cloud people. Is that our next phase of human evolution?
Scott, I totally feel you with these histrionics.
Turns into the Matrix eventually.
Let's go to Pep, please.
Pep muted.
You're muted.
Fuck, always.
who needs an
Okay.
AI assistant
Yeah,
to
maybe
I do
we
manage
need
should
that
an
mute
AI
button for.
assistant. I really fucking do. I do agree with Lactoid in that if you take away all life, that is not teaching anybody anything helpful. Making everything just always go smoothly and perfect is completely like de-preparing. That's not even a word, but like it's removing people's capacity to be able to handle conflict that does actually come up. However, somebody in my chat brought up the idea of like, so many like real life relationships can be toxic relationships though. And so what if you could do like the inverse of that, in that you could have an AI model how to have like a healthy relationship, and that would include conflict and things like that. That's something that I haven't seen brought up, and I feel like that could be, it's similar to the father figure thing. Like maybe that would be useful, but then it does still have the same problem of like, actually I don't think it has the same problem of making you underprepared to deal with other functional humans, because I think the conflict would be built in and like make you more able to handle those
But
things.
no, so it does have the same problem because, well, a similar but different problem. I'll give you that. So one of the problems with it is because you are only exposed to the healthy conflict and things like that, you become intolerant of anything less, right? And humans, I'm sorry to say, cannot compete, right? They cannot compete. And so eventually, right, one of the potential issues, and it may not happen, and maybe we'll think of safety mechanisms like seat belts and things to put into place to prevent it. But the concern is that when we have the perfect, no one will settle for less because it's so readily available and affordable, and you just won't settle for less. And so
What if it is explicitly not perfect and it's just like a tricycle? It's like not a bike. It's you very much feel that like, okay, this is like the training wheels for like real life. What if it was something like that?
I mean, yeah, if
You
it's perfect,
guys
it
are
goes
saying
perfectly. But I think that the issue is like if the technology exists, like if you're saying the technology exists to make an imperfect situation, someone's going to mod it. Like that's what I'm saying. Like you can't. That's what I'm saying. You can't stop it. You
Oh
can't
yeah,
prevent it.
true.
Kind of like
there.
what is it? Oh crap. GTA 5. Like people they made this game about like a drug dealer that goes off and like supposed to make money, and then people figured out how to mod it or Sims or whatever, and you insert people into it, and they're going to make every other variation of it. Like the positive variations will exist, but that means that they're also capable to make the like negative variations, and those
You
are
guys
also
are
going to exist.
you guys keep saying perfect, like it can be made perfectly to replace like normal human interaction. There's going to be an elephant in the room for a large portion of the population. I saw the movie Her on a first date, and there's a sex scene in the movie where the screen is black and there's just audible moans for like 3 minutes, and it's incredibly awkward. And it's only awkward because it's a robot. Um, I would wager a guess that probably the majority, there would be the lonely gentleman, which is a growing problem that we're talking about, and I think it's primarily men, would obviously take what they can get. And I think there's probably some in terms of cost versus benefit, type of scale, there's probably some benefit to that. But there will always be, you're just saying we would lose the ability to learn how to be fathers or learn how to be good partners or whatever that is. I think that there would always be a sizable portion of the population that just would refuse to participate because the elephant in the room is that
maybe
it's not real.
maybe, but this will only last a generation or two before it's accepted, right? Like you cannot stop this acceptance process from happening. Like you can mitigate it to some extent, and there might be always some holdouts, but the more something is available, right, the longer it's available, the more normalized it is, the more and more people will adopt it, because the ones who don't adopt it will fall behind. They will be less productive, less happy, less all these things, right? That is just, this is why automation, right? If you don't automate, you're going to fall behind as a country. So countries can't not automate,
You're saying
right?
there'd
I
be
mean,
less
We're less
You
than
happy.
2
disagree
years
with
from
me,
someone
Prime? Why are
asking
you
to
shaking your
marry
head?
we're less than 2 years from someone asking to marry this thing, and we're going to give it rights because people are going to say they're not
dog, people have already
fathers,
tried to marry trees, but
No,
They've
I'm
married
saying
the
it's
Eiffel
gonna
Tower
happen.
before. Yeah, it exists.
so here's the thing, right? Like we're
I'm
making
sorry. I do want to
assumptions about.
before you do. I do want to get Corey in because Corey is the one who hasn't talked. But we can go to you next. And Scott, for some reason, your gain is off. It was fine previously, but now your gain is off, and you're really gaining now. So
What does off mean?
You sound
your
buzzy.
your buzz. Yeah. Your gain seems to be up. And
Okay, am I loud?
yeah. Yeah.
You're allowed in like a
It
little
was
bit.
it
at
was
least
fine
muffled.
previously when
And
you
you're
started.
shredded.
So I don't know. But let's go to Corey.
Yeah, a few or a couple of things. Sort of like, well, still touching on what Wick brought up in terms of like, well, basically losing the ability to engage in some human interactions, like, and also Lactoid spoke to this as well. It's like, I can't wait for the day where people are just interacting, through Chat GPT, like text messaging, just like two people just Chat GPT, automated messages. But I think there's also an element that Kilo brought up in terms of like an aspect of truth, and that is something that I think there's a lot to talk about there personally, but also the aspect of like, at least right now, what AI can't give, and I think this is why I characterize these things as pseudo connections. As of right now, at least as far as I know, AI can't give you touch, and
testing.
as alluded to earlier, there's a loneliness epidemic
Really
for
close
sure.
to
But but it can't
That's
give
common.
human touch.
Corey, that's common. Like it can't do it now, but we gotta
Yeah,
look
yeah.
3 steps
Westworld,
ahead.
man.
That
Think of Westworld.
absolutely. Have you
Yeah,
seen
for
the
sure.
videos of people with robots and things like they're making robots right now, right?
Oh no,
Like,
no,
this
but
is a
that's not
thing.
We'll be
that's the
having
thing.
sex
Like
robots by
many
2025.
people, if I can just finish my point, sorry. Where
Testing,
like, so I
testing.
think that bleeds into what Kilo was saying in terms of like, I agree with you. Robots can touch you, but I think if some people know, and I think I think some people will know, and it will undermine
Lacto, let your
process.
prosecutor friends know. Go ahead.
That like, yeah, just as we have an
Corey?
epidemic of loneliness, can I just finish my point? Well, just as there's an epidemic of loneliness, there are a growing number of people
Right,
that
that's
are
the best I can do.
touch-starved
I don't know
and
what the
human
fuck happened.
touch-starved. And I don't know that robot touch can really replace human touch. Maybe it can, but I don't even know that I want to live in that world, per se.
You
you're-
won't be
you're-
able to tell the difference.
No. He will. So as long as I think
What?
the ethical question that gets raised by something like the AI chatbot is whether the users are made fully aware that it is not a real person. As long as they are made fully aware that it is not a real person, there's no ethical consideration. We're all good to go. Full
You
steam ahead.
forget, right? You could
Yeah,
be
no one's
you-
gonna
No, no.
care.
Yeah, look,
I
when
don't
someone
agree
comes
with
up
you.
to you and shows
Hold
their
on.
whole ass, they
The religious
people
might, but no
forget,
one else is going to.
right?
I don't
They
agree with you. I'm
forget.
not religious, and I think I would always care.
Yeah,
So
I think I
okay.
would care too, personally.
Have you ever? Yeah. So
That's
even
weird.
if in the instance of what Pep was suggesting, which was that the AI models become so advanced that they're able to predict when you would prefer conflict and imperfection in a human interaction versus when it is important for it to be perfect and provide you exactly what it is that you need. There's still the little voice in the back of your head that's telling you that it's even when you're arguing, it's giving you what it thinks that you want. It's doing it based on what it thinks would be the best possible thing to continue for you to be its customer, basically. Have you guys?
That problem exists in real relationships, bro. When you're with a partner, oh, is this person just saying what I want so they don't have conflict? That happens in real relationships.
But that
People
is a
tell
real
themselves
conflict.
voice in
That is a
all the
very
time.
real, natural thing that happens.
Yes, I understand. It's just not
Slightly
fundamentally
misunderstood
different
by
than a
it.
normal relationship.
Let me go ahead.
I
Beth.
didn't mean conflict that somebody actually wanted, not that the person wanted conflict. I mean that the AI could tell that like a person needed to experience conflict to develop better as like a person who could handle like reality. Not that the person wanted.
That's semantic. Yeah, the same thing. That's fine.
Is it? I don't think so.
I think it is the same thing. Those things seem
No,
different.
that's
Whether
completely
you're
different.
introducing conflict because you think that let's call them a customer, is going to benefit from it psychologically, or whether you're introducing conflict to make it feel more organic. It's the same
it's
thing.
not
You
to
think
more
it's
I mean, it
suiting
can
the
be in a
customer.
field of
It's
data.
to actually like benefit the person in the long run, but not necessarily give them what they want in that moment. And maybe they aren't a customer after the conflict. It's explicitly the opposite of what you were just saying.
I don't think that they would make models that would not be in this.
You missed her analogy. Her original analogy was like, what if we had like therapy, or we had like some type of AI that was designed to teach people how to engage in more meaningful relationships? And then there was coming after that.
What I think I'm trying to say, okay, so I might have missed that specific point. I think what I'm saying is that either way, it doesn't make a difference to me. You're still losing out on. Scott, you're more well versed on like the different schools of philosophy. Am I making an appeal to like a deontological like perspective of like the natural order of something? Like,
so
it's almost like
what I would say is that where you're really going is, I think we're going into existential philosophy. Existentialism.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
right? So I think like Dostoevsky famously said in Notes in the Underground, there's like 3 different translations in English, right? Like, I mean, I think he's one of the better, I think he's better than Kierkegaard, but that's just my personal opinion. But I mean, you could get this idea as well just from the Grand Inquisitor from the Brothers Karamazov, right? And the idea is that like, even if humans were in a perfect world, like it would drive them insane. That they would do something to fuck up the perfect world because humans breed on a certain conflict. And I think that deals a lot with the uncanny valley and the idea of how companies might utilize lying about being with an AI, because once they know that there's an AI there is something, you know, Robert Bella, you know, famous sociologist of religion, talked about how human beings have a disposition towards domination, but they also have a disposition to resent domination. And like, I think AI fits into that category too. This resentment of like possibly being manipulated by a program that only wants to feed them what they want.
I don't know this
perfect.
will happen. Just
I
real
have
quick.
to.
I don't know this will happen. I'll be concise, I promise. I don't know this will happen, but I think it is likely to happen that there will come a day in the next 50 to 100 years that you will be walking down the street and you won't be able to pick out the humans from the AI bots, right? You just will not. They will interact with you, you will have meaningful interactions, and you will not be able to tell the difference.
But
Okay,
so this is
so I want to so we got to move on. We got to move on. We got Aiko and Bam. And I'm gonna put something. I'll put 2 things out here. One, cards out on the table. I talked about this before, but Futurama has an episode where like they explore
Lucy
the
Liu.
idea, the Lucy Liu sex bots,
Yeah.
and they have that the PSA about like the dangers of sex bots, and that like little Jimmy won't want to date little Steffi because it could just get all the sex from his sex bot, right? Like I looked at that as the coming paradise. So I felt like but I understand that like I'm different from others. I'm a deviant, to be honest. And that's okay. It's kind of like I want to pull it back from like the histrionics from all these things, like the collapse of society. Yes, there are going to be people like me who will fuck their sex bots and never leave their house. Like it's just that's it,
You
right? They
degenerate.
found their
Yeah.
paradise and they'll be done with it. But there'll be plenty of other people who want different things, both because of cultural reasons, because of intellectual reasons, because of economic reasons, for all kinds of things. So I don't think we're facing
Prime.
down the
Real
end
quick.
of society. So like, and I did want to I know say something really quick, but like and very quickly, I kind of did want to like concentrate on like this product and as it stands, right? And like explore that for like today rather than like let's game this out for like 100 years from now, which none of
Okay,
us like.
but
I don't think you can
please let me
segregate the two.
indulge for just a moment. Please let me indulge for just a moment, gaming it out. Okay, you have this sex bot, right? And we live in the world where the meaningful difference between a human being and an AI robot is that it's difficult to tell unless it's programmed to be allowed to be smarter than us, right? So long as it's programmed to be as smart as a regular human, it's almost impossible to tell. But if not, it's basically superior in form and function to a human being. And so you have this sex bot, right? But what happens when the sex bot is property and your property can do a job? What happens when your property can be a mom? What happens when you go to the sperm bank and you donate sperm in exchange because you're ready to be a parent and you raise a child with the sex bot because it turns into wanting a family? And what happens when there are no more orphanages because AIs become legitimate means of being able to raise
indeed,
children?
what happens when AI become women? Okay, good. Let's
Right,
go
you know
to yeah, well, like do all the things
Yeah,
that
so
we do to
I'm
women
just
now.
saying it doesn't have to be a dystopia. Like Here Be Dragons goes in both directions.
No, I hear you. Aiko, Bam, and I'm not sure if Pep, you had your hand up or was that your finger? I don't know. But it's okay. Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so we go to Aiko, Bam, Pep, and Kilo.
Yeah, I don't think we even have to like wait for like this future tech or whatever. I think There's like there are plenty of examples today of, I think everyone's like seen like segments of like talk shows where they've talked about romance scams and how they work, and how people have had like years long relationships with what they think is a young beautiful woman, impossibly beautiful and half their age and somehow millionaires, and but are interested in them. And then when these people who are now sort of, there's a whole profession of people that bust these sorts of people, they go to these victims and they say, here are all the reasons why we know this is a scammer. Like, here's the photograph of the real person. Here's like 15 other victims of this same person. Here's the exact same, like really bad, like very easily detectable, like scamming techniques that have been used. And they still don't believe it because they still desperately want to believe that the person on the other end of that line isn't actually like a 50-year-old man in like Africa. And so even with all of that, even with like human beings who are like not nowhere nearly as effective as these AIs can be, even if we are specifically told in advance that you're buying a product, there's just some part of our lizard brain that wants to believe certain things. And I think that the potential for AIs to become romance scammers and to be utilized in that way is not very far off. Like that's not like a big here be dragons, like,
it's not
you know,
far
what
off. It's already happening.
Yeah, it's already happening. It's already happening with humans. It's already happening with AIs. It's been happening for a long time, and it's just going to get it's just getting more effective now. And I think that the amount of money that can be made doing that, I think is going to be just as impossible to expect anyone not to continue to like scam people in this way. And also it's impossible to believe that there won't be a lot of willing victims, just like there are willing victims like right now. Like one person that you have on these panels every once in a while, Ginger Ramoth, right? She does a lot of this on her stream where she just does nothing but like show these like romance scam sort of videos or whatever. And so these this is stuff that I think is becoming just commonplace. I I know two people in my family who have been victims of this sort of scamming. And I think a lot of people know people personally who have been. So that means this sort of interaction is already incredibly common, to the point where like we anecdotally like know people who are interacting with this. So it's not even like a far-fetched like future thing. It's like it's very common.
Let's go to Bam, Pep, Kilo, and Lactoid.
Yeah, and just by a show of hands, like based on even just the technology right now, let's say you're in a conversation like there's two parts. I want to talk about, but this is just the first thing. Let's say that you're in a Discord chat just like this, and somebody comes out and says they're like, "Oh yeah, um, this is my girlfriend. She's an AI thing. This is her name." Are any of you going like hard to like tell that person that's not true? Or
I
you're
will
even
absolutely
deciding it?
mock them for it. Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
come on, man.
I mean, I mock people for everything.
Wait,
so,
what?
like,
If you wait,
I
are you
will find
like,
are you
are you-
real here?
weaknesses
not even
Are
like
you
a
being
big
real here?
engagement.
If someone comes up to says, "Hey, this is my AI girlfriend," you're not going to like.
That
I was saying
person is
they ask
clearly
you to
afflicted
respect.
with something.
Maybe like an involuntary
No,
gasp.
wait a
at the
minute.
very
Wait a minute.
least,
No,
right?
I'm quite. The reason I'm calling cap is because like at the end of the day, like the conversation we're having now is like 50 years ago. The conversation you're having about like LGBT rights.
What?
Like
No,
it
one's
is.
Or
human, one's
today,
not.
or
No,
the
I
conversation.
still
well,
make
sure.
fun of gay people when they come into my Discord. Whatever it is about you that's different, I will fucking make fun
No,
of.
I
And if
I
I
believe
don't,
you, Scott.
it's
But
because I
I
don't
just
give a
wanted to
fuck
raise his
about
hand.
you.
I didn't want engagement with this. Like I was just the idea if you would comment, like if you would say like no, it's not. If you would fight them on it. So,
I would not. I would comment in a supportive way and question, but I would not shame or mock. No.
100%.
and
Yeah.
same. Okay. Second
And
question.
I make fun of
I-
Corey for
Don't
being
even
so
fucking
nice.
relate.
I,
Still
I,
didn't
I
want
would I
engagement.
would respectfully shame, and the reason is because
I still didn't want
yeah,
engagement.
in like the most
That's
respectful
an,
way
oxy,
possible.
that's an
And
oxymoron,
I'm
practically.
about to
but
piss
okay.
off. I'm about to like piss off a lot of people.
My good sir, that is not your girlfriend.
I see it almost like why not? People who can't don't, I guess, make friends with like humans, but like are obsessed with making friends with like animals, like dogs. Like they just can't, they have all these dogs, they can't stop thinking about them. it almost seems like you're playing on easy mode, right? Like you're just like, how can I really like establish some kind of like that you're somebody to be reckoned with, that you're some kind of force here that like knows how to like deal with people.
No,
you couldn't even get a, you couldn't even get a human
I don't think they
girlfriend.
care what you think about
I
them.
wanna
Again, I
ask.
didn't want to
They
engage
don't
with
have
this.
to.
This is
They
what
can
I'm saying.
ignore my respectful
Look,
shaming.
I just wanted
but,
a hand
like,
raised.
I want to ask
That was
Corey
all I
and Kilo
wanted.
because I don't believe them. You would say, right? Like if someone came up to you and said, "This is my AI girlfriend," you would have not even in secret to your buddies. You wouldn't DM anyone like, "Yo, look at this is wild." You wouldn't do any of
No,
that.
absolutely not.
So
I stand by.
I feel like Corey's the only one who's way closer to the truth than what everyone else is currently engaging in because you don't see it as like reality.
Wait,
But I
wait,
feel
wait,
like
wait, wait,
for
wait.
the most part, well, if you're not conservative, I think conservatives actually push back against a lot of things about other people's social dynamics. But if you've like bought into the like, if you're like a hard progressive, generally, even if you think someone's doing something weird, like you're the social norm is like to just accept it.
I think this is a
Disgusting.
caricature
Wait a minute,
of
that
progressives.
wasn't my
Can I-
point.
It's
I just
against
wanted to raise a
God.
hand.
I'm gonna
I
respond,
don't
I'm
want
gonna
to talk.
respond.
I don't want you to talk right now. Okay.
I know
Second
you don't,
part.
but you're saying silly shit.
Just a raise of hands. That's all I want. Don't nobody speak. Would you, even if you thought it was weird, would you be picketing outside of Congress for someone, for a person that was asking to marry their AI? Would it affect you that strongly that you would fight against it?
To
Or raise your hands.
pick
if
Wait,
you
wait, wait.
would.
Are we fighting against this being legal or for
Yes,
this being legal?
against it. Like
I don't
strong
think
enough
I'd
that you're
fight
like willing to
against it,
fight
no.
Congress.
You know, a
Yeah, I don't
woman
think so.
legally married the Eiffel Tower, and I'm
Raise
not
of
out here
hands if
picking.
you would. So nobody would go that far, which means that then it doesn't matter what you consider real or not, because that's what's going to happen. No one's going to.
It
no
fucking
one,
matters to me.
outside
It
of
fucking matters to me.
conservatives,
I'm just
yes.
an anarchist. So like
Sure,
obviously
but-
I'm not going to petition the government to ban shit I don't like.
Sure,
Well,
but,
but
I'm saying,
also
like,
Corey's the only good person on this panel. So
But yeah,
you
that
have to
was
keep
the-
that in mind.
Hey,
that was the point
relax.
I
He's
was
a
saying.
communist.
like
He's a
I
communist,
think
so
he's
there's no such thing
failing.
as a
I
good
just
cop.
honestly, I think he's failing them by not shaming them.
Wait,
yeah,
wait,
okay.
wait, wait,
So,
wait.
Yeah, a good
I
friend
don't
of
wanna-
yours, like
10
that
minutes
you
ago.
know well, like comes up to you with a, "Hey, here's my AI girlfriend." You're really gonna look at them the same way? You really,
No,
like,
no.
deep
Hold
down.
on. Wait. I am extremely sympathetic. I won't get too personal. There's someone who's incredibly dear to me, who is older than me, who has never had a girlfriend, who has never kissed anyone, who's never been on a date, and they received a lot of fulfillment in the form of whoever's laughing. I'm trying to be like serious here. Like they received a lot of like self-fulfillment in the form of interacting with like an e-girl, like someone who they gave money to. Like, and that was the closest thing they had to being able to like. Now, if you think that I just don't say anything ever to this person, if you think that I'm just like super passive and encouraging of whatever it is that they want to do, I mean, you're wrong. I've tried to help this person. I've tried to like give them advice on exactly what it is that they should say to women when they approach them and where to go and all these kinds of things. But shaming them, like people literally kill themselves over like the guilt of not having ever been with a woman before. You're saying you're gonna shame them and mock them over what's clearly an
Yes.
affliction.
Yes.
The same
think
way
that's
I would hold
gross.
an intervention for my friend who was a
I think
heroin
your
addict.
attempted emotional
ask-
manipulation is
Can I
gross.
ask a follow-up question? Like, so why would you? So let's say either you, Wick, or Lactoid, or even you, Scott. Why would you shame them? What is your rationale
Much like,
behind that?
right? Much like
Reality.
if I see someone harming themselves, I'm going to step in and try to get
Okay.
them not to harm themselves.
So
The first step is admitting that they have a problem, that this is not okay.
okay. So
But you
okay.
define
So
that by
can
harms.
I please follow up on that? Because I want to push back against this. So your overall guiding principle of like yes, so please don't jump in, Scott. So your overall guiding principle is like yes, someone I care about, they're engaged in self-harm, and so I want them to change their behaviors. I'm going to shame them.
I'm going
Would
to
you
try to
do
stop
that? Would you carry out this tactic on someone like doing like self-harm, as in cutting themselves? Would you do that?
If they were cutting themselves, I would absolutely get them to see a therapist if I could. If
Why
that
not
was
shame
in
them?
my
By
power-
shaming them?
Why
if
not
that
shame
was
them?
in my power, I'm like, yo, what are you doing here? You
So-
need to go see a therapist.
So would you shame them? You didn't answer my question.
if
Would you
that
shame them?
worked, yes.
How are you know it's going to work? What screening process are you going to use to
I'm
determine
going to
whether it
try
works? or not?
any and every means available to get them to stop. The fact that you wouldn't is kind of sus. The
Okay,
fact
so
that there are
how-
some things, if you could use this tactic and it
didn't
would
say-
make them stop, and you would not use this tactic, that's weird.
You're contorting his argument.
I think this is sorry. I gotta jump in here because I had a friend previously
Corey.
who cut themselves.
That's okay.
And yeah, I talked to them about it. They admitted it that it was this thing that they did, and they talked about like how like it's a coping mechanism and that people react to it more strongly than it needs to be. Right? Maybe there could be ones who are actually like trying to kill themselves. That's one thing. But a lot of people use it as a coping mechanism. But because
Absolutely.
people can't see past that, right? Because they're just so alarmed about the blood and all that, that they actually end up doing more harm than good by like trying to force them to change or to shame them or to whatever there is. Their tough love here. So like I think that's like the problem.
But they're
Right?
in
No,
line,
this is-
right?
Wick, you
this is-
contorted.
We're
Wait,
the
wait,
society that
Wick,
allows people to identify as trees.
Wick contorted
Yeah.
what Corey was trying to say.
Like,
Absolutely.
this
He said-
No, I was
no.
just elucidating it. I
He
was
said, no, you
disentangling it from the
contorted
knot he was
because you
pulling
said
in.
what you
He's
said
this
was,
logic
oh, if
train, and I don't have to go on his track.
if
I can
what
get
you
off
said
at any
was
moment, right? I can
if
say,
the
"No, that's
shaming
wrong."
was proven to work, you wouldn't do it. But that's not the frame of what we're talking about. Obviously, if that was literally the only solution to getting this person help, then I'm sure Corey would be willing to entertain that. He's saying that there's probably better ways of accomplishing the thing that we're trying to accomplish. And you're saying, oh, well, you wouldn't shame even if that was the only way he could possibly do it. You're completely contorting what he was trying to say.
If someone,
Okay,
This entire conversation is contorted. Like,
So-
for the love of Christ,
yeah.
like none of you are mental health professionals, right? The original context of the conversation, right, was someone came into your Discord and was like, "This is my AI girlfriend. Would you make fun of them for it?" And I think most people would. Because someone just came into your Discord and said, "Here's my AI girlfriend," they'd be like, "Hey, that's fucking weird," right? That's how people are. And a bunch of people that are putting forward their personas of themselves to an audience that they're trying to form a parasocial relationship with are bullshitting about who they actually fucking are. And the fact is, if you're chilling in a Discord and someone randomly shows up and is like, "I have an AI girlfriend," they'd be like, "I'm sorry, that's fucking weird. Haven't heard that one before."
if someone
Right,
came
but if
up
you
to you
compare
and
it-
said, "I
if you
married my
compare it-
dog,"
Right, but if you compare it to someone
wouldn't
who's
shame them?
cutting, right, like then like you're talking about different scenarios, and all of a sudden, yes, both of the scenarios need to be contextualized by like things we can't actually say right now. And on top of that, right, as someone that went to grad school for counseling, myself included, none of you know what the fuck you're talking about when it comes to a random individual that is a hypothetical. There's different responses that work for different people. The entire conversation is a bit of an aside and silly, and it's just moral grandstanding.
Okay. So we're gonna move past this. Pep, I think you wanted to say something a long time ago. So you still know what that is after you've unmuted
Yeah.
yourself.
I just had I just had like one question. It's like an odd thought. Would you prefer somebody was in a significant relationship with a significant relationship, but a healthy one with an AI, or a super abusive and unhealthy one with a human?
Can I ask a clarifying on that? Are we talking the AI as it exists today?
Oh, that's a very good question. Because a lot of my thoughts on AI change once it gains. If it's like a sentient, conscious being, then
I can't speak for AI as it might be, but I can speak for
Yeah.
AI today.
Yeah,
If that
go ahead.
helps you.
Yeah, I would say
So-
the person talking to the AI, just because you're dealing with a person being harmed versus another person being harmed and doing something weird.
So I mean,
they
I
both could be
obviously,
toxic
ideally,
and harmful, to be fair.
I mean,
Yeah.
a person not being harmed and doing something.
look, I think both are being harmed in different ways. I think in both
Mm.
situations there is harm being done to this person. In one, it's more insidious in that it's something that a lot of people wouldn't recognize as harm, but it absolutely is. It's opportunity cost because they're engaged in this healthy relationship with the AI as it exists, with this chat girlfriend, right? This AI girlfriend, right? That is absolutely, it's draining their time, resources. It's preventing them from getting the skills necessary to get an actual girlfriend. There are a lot of opportunity costs. This is legitimate harm being done to them.
Yeah.
Now,
Well,
is
yeah,
it better or
If
worse?
that's the case,
I
if that's the case,
I gotta
case-
push. Hold on, stop it. Don't talk over me. I gotta push
oh my
back. on
god.
Yeah, oh my god, yeah, kind of she has
Can't
to
you just
talk.
have
No
Lester
one,
get a
no
word
one
in
knows your
occasionally?
opinions on this, Scott. I'm sorry. Yeah, I know. I silence you all the goddamn time. Any which way, as a person who has dealt with women. All right, I'll put some more cards on the table here. Like my
no evidence to back
emotional
this up, but go on.
trauma, right? Most of my emotional trauma have come from women. My interactions with women, like they have, not all, obviously, but my intimate emotional contact with women has ended with really terrible trauma. Like the worst I felt about myself has been because of my interactions with women. And to say that, like, well, if I have some sort of facsimile, right, whether I perceive it as a woman or not, and I'm having this intimate relationship, and it's like healthy, which is what Pep stated, right? And that like I'm having like these great interactions that boost my self confidence, that adds joy into my life, right? To say that this is inherently destructive, that this is inherently harmful, one, I think it's just narrow minded, and two, also I don't think you understand that, like, because we're doing the incel thing within this argument, that the people who want to interact with these people must be incels. Oh, you don't fuck. Oh, you don't know how to interact with women. I know how to interact with women. And I've put my penis in places in the past, but like that
Congratulations.
doesn't mean that there's not something I can't gain from that maybe is lacking from these real life interactions. Now, obviously, yes, there is my dream girl is out there. Will I meet her? I might not. It might not ever happen. People born, live, and die without ever meeting that special someone. Happens all the goddamn time. But if you could find something, right, that maybe you paid for, maybe you didn't, that gave you that emotional connection, to say that is inherently lesser than, I think that's a huge issue.
Okay, well,
Like, what if
I
it was
want
an
to push
ace
back
romantic
against this.
person that
Look, he's
didn't
arguing
want to
with
deal
me.
with a
Let me argue with him. Let me argue with him for a moment, please. Right? In a friendly manner. Like, so the reason I say this, right, is because it is, right, lesser, I feel. Like, yes, you specifically have had bad trauma in the past, right? Many of us have when it comes to women. But I can't speak for you, but I can speak for myself. Some of the greatest moments in my life have been with women too. I mean, and to get addicted, right? And to get addicted to this facsimile, right? To this cheap knockoff that the AI as it exists today represent, right? There is a cost associated with that. That doesn't come without consequences. That doesn't come without it being an opportunity cost at the very least, because I am getting empty calories. I think I am full, but I am destroying myself. That is what that represents, right?
Would you be okay with an ace
I feel like
romantic
that's
person playing video games?
Sorry, well, let's let Pep finish your point. I'll have to deal
So,
with you
yeah,
later because other people need
I
to
feel
jump in.
like
So Pep,
there
Pep, Kylo, Lactoid, Scott, go ahead.
I feel like you could say the same thing about so many relationships people engage in. Like, there's many
God damn
people
it.
don't have healthy relationships modeled for them ever. And
Sure.
so having a healthy relationship modeled for it that you get to participate in, and that, like, maybe there are solvable problems here. Maybe there could be like a time limit on it. Maybe there are parameters that negate some of the harms that you're thinking of. But I think overall, like, plenty of real life relationships do like take a huge opportunity cost,
That's
do like
true
kind of
as well.
permanent horrible harm
That's
that people
true as
have
well.
like take years to recover from. And so
What
maybe like
what the
not
difference
doing that.
is, if I may,
Yeah.
what the difference
Mhm.
is I think that there is a ceiling on the facsimile, the AI, that there is not when it comes to real life actual relationships. I think that the ceiling, the potentiality for good to come of that is much, much, much lower than the potentiality to come with an actual relationship with an
But at the
actual
same
human
time, there's
being.
like a very finite cap on the harm it can do as well, which is part of the
Let's
benefit.
go
That
to
$1 a minute?
Oh no, I don't mean the $1 a minute one. Sorry, not that. But just in
Kylo,
general. Like,
Lactoid, Scott.
One of the AIs taught them how to kill himself, just for the record. Like, I don't
We're
know
also-
that there is a limit.
Hey, Kylo.
But we're also talking 1 versus 0, right? So if you think that the real life relationship, the potentiality for benefit is way higher, we're talking about people who don't have access to the real life relationship. Typically, I would assume.
Do you think they can never have access?
No, of course not. That's not what I'm
Okay,
saying.
so that's
but
the
we're
problem,
talking
right?
about 1 versus 0. Yeah, of course. Yeah. How
No,
do you
so
address
that's the harm, is
loneliness?
that because they are getting it this way, it does not motivate them to get it from the better
Yeah,
way.
yeah, perhaps, right?
That's
But we're
the
talking
problem.
about a 1 versus a 0. We're talking about a benefit versus not having the benefit at all. I know that one is greater than the other. I'm just saying. So the thing I want, well, Prime, regarding how you wanted this conversation to go, I know you wanted to talk about the AI chat model as it exists today. I do not think I can segregate the two. I think at the second we say that this type of like chat model for AI is acceptable or has benefits or whatever it is, we've just opened the door for wherever else that AI is going, which we cannot stop. It's heading there for sure. I
But we
kind of
also don't
jokingly
know. But go
no,
ahead.
well, we have a pretty good idea, I think, right? So
I don't think we do. I think Scott was right previously. Like, here be dragons.
I'm
We
talking about
actually don't.
well,
Go
no, no,
ahead.
no. I'm
I'm
talking
sorry. I
about
keep interrupting you.
you're okay. You're right. We don't know for sure. I'm saying what we assume is the probable implementations of AI in terms of like therapists and father figures and things like that. Like, of course, people are going to explore these options and probably be able to come up with relatively effective solutions for these things. I think the question that I want to ask the entire panel, if you're worried about these types of things replacing or supplementing what is existing normal valuable human interaction, uh, to make an analogy and phrase it a little bit differently from how I said it earlier, have you ever been playing a video game and the second you discover the cheat codes and you punch in, you press the pause menu on PlayStation, you punch in God mode or whatever, you have fun for a little bit, and eventually you lose interest actually relatively quickly and you don't feel like finishing the game. It ceases to be a game. In the same way,
Yeah.
Scott,
So
Look at my
like
relationship on hard
let's
mode.
we can look at the marketing research that that cognitive psychologists have done in terms of loot boxes, loot crates, or even just in-game loot, right? And what we can understand is that there used to be systems in older video games where the idea was you kill a monster, you get this piece of loot, right? And then what they started doing is they took cognitive psychological research and variable ratios, right? And recognized that if they introduced their variable ratio to their loot mechanics system, that it would actually keep people playing the video game for longer, because just around the corner might be that big hit. And then there was smaller hits that they would get from like loot things, like let you play a game that has like gear drops, like green gear would drop every now and then at a variable ratio, and it would keep people hooked. And so I understand the analogy, but the problem is that these systems and these computers also understand that about us, and the people that are developing this also understand that about us. And so they will introduce conflict. They will introduce the things that keep you from disengaging and get better and better at it, so that it's actually better than what you would potentially get from another human being.
I'm talking about the existing like knowledge, the voice in the back of your head, the constant awareness that what you're engaging in is not real.
I think that's going to be different from an individual basis.
Most people.
No, I know, but the insinuation seems like it's like a lot of people think that this will completely override all of our sociological structures and they'll be entirely replaced. Interpersonal relationships will be entirely replaced with what is the perfected AI.
I'm not saying that.
Okay, well, that's the worry, right? I mean, it seems like
That's
there's a
not my
concern.
worry.
There is a non-zero chance of that happening. Do I think it's likely? I think there's always going to be holdouts. But even if it only replaces 80%, right? That's still a huge issue for me, right?
Depends on if you think overpopulation is an issue or not.
Well, Kilo, there's another problem, right? Like, we also have to recognize that this same technology is being utilized as a massive labor-saving device, right? And so, like, what does that mean in terms of our free time or the economy if it's handled in such a way that prices on goods and the ability to produce food, education, all of these things that used to take a lot of human capital no longer take that, and we have more time to act, like, we just don't know.
In respect to Prime, I feel like I'm trying to keep it as like close to the chest of like relationships and sex and stuff like that as possible.
Yeah, but I'm also looking at like Copilot, and like we're a couple months away from Microsoft Copilot coming out, and like one third of every HR worker and accountant and like office worker doesn't need to exist anymore the moment Microsoft Copilot hits. You'd be an idiot to keep your entire labor force if you purchase Microsoft Copilot. Like, you should fire a third of your people because you're just going to be more profitable.
If you're being profit oriented,
let's go to Lactoid has been waiting ultra patiently.
Or you'll move in a new industry, you know what I mean, and utilize them for something
and
else.
Aiko, if you have anything to add, let me know. But okay.
Yeah, I wanted to say a few things, and it's regarding some stuff that was a little bit back. So if this is not on the train, feel free to stop. I think Wick was 100% correct when he was talking about opportunity costs when it comes to these kind of AI relationships.
Just like young girls that go to the clubs.
Where there is an opportunity cost with everything. And yeah, when you're, is there some small subsect of people who just for one reason or another genuinely cannot establish some kind of relationship, really, no matter how hard they work, right? I would imagine there could be narrow circumstances along these lines. I think for most people, this is probably not the case. And I'm concerned with a couple things here. The first thing is, and this kind of goes back to why, to answer Corey's question, why I would respectfully shame somebody, which is that you try to keep the shame away from the person and you try to isolate the shame on the activity, right? If my friend is drunk driving, I'm not going to tell him he's a terrible person, but I am going to say that activity's bad because of XYZ reason. You'd be better off if you weren't doing that, right?
That's
and
not
here's
shaming,
why.
though.
Okay?
At least you're not using it.
It truly is shaming.
But it is, though, in a sense, right? Because whenever I see them do it, I'm going to socially disengage. I'm going to be like, God
not
damn
in
it,
academic
dude.
sense.
I'm like, God damn it, dude. Okay, maybe not in that academic sense, but like, would I shame somebody for drunk driving? Does shaming mean that I think they're like a horrible, unretrievable person? No. It means that they're engaging in an activity that I don't think it's beneficial for their own well-being in the long run for the vast majority of them. And also, there's another thing that shaming can help prevent is social contagion, right? Where the people who maybe are so far gone, it might be questionable how much it helps them. But then we also have people who are maybe sort of on the edge where they're considering doing this, right? And they would be much more, if it was socially accepted, they might, like if cigarettes are socially accepted, people might be more likely to smoke. Now, does banning, do cigarette advertisements stop like a very established smoker? Maybe not, but they might stop the person from trying. They might stop the person from getting involved. I think this is probably the same when it comes to e-girls, when it comes to OnlyFans, and when it comes to the AI thing, right? And that's another reason why I think that, again, respectful shaming could have a place. If somebody came to me and they're like, hey, here's my AI girlfriend, if they're really far down and like this is the only thing for them, I could maybe live with it. But if I think that I could bring this person out of that, or if somebody's like, hey, I'm considering doing this, like, no, there's going to be a little bit of shame there. And I think that might be helpful for them in the long run. So there's that.
And we'll go to Bam. Yep.
Yeah, I think that the people who don't believe where like these types of things can go, like the types of conversations we're having right now, like you understand that Discord, these like voice not voice chats, video chats, like this is where people have, these are who people consider their friendships. People consider this like normal, healthy,
And we are worse off
natural
for it, yes.
type of friendships and relationships, and that that's something that we accept, we tolerate it. We don't tell people, oh, do they live in your state? No, they're not your real friend. They're not a real person.
Wait, whoa, yes we do. Yes we do.
I
If
assure
all
you
your
that
friends,
I consider none of you my real friends.
if I talk to someone and the only friends that they have are online, I do feel a certain type of way about it, and I do let them know.
I mean, that's great that you do, but generally, as a population, we don't get meddle that much into a person we don't truly deeply love and care about's life. If it's just like a person you meet, you generally respect, like you say, like okay, and you move on with the conversation. Like I think that the average person who's like furry cat boy mew, like I think that's weird, but I would never call them out in person. I think most people wouldn't. So it's like the idea that like we're gonna have some like. Like it with AI, we're gonna be somewhat different. We're gonna be so principled and like put our foot down.
You think most normal people wouldn't have something to say if someone was like, "Yeah, I'm a furry and my persona is this." I think you might be living in like an online space with a younger generation that accepts weird shit. Maybe a little bit too much, because I think your average Joe, if someone goes up to him and they go, "My persona as a foxkin is,"
but those aren't analogous. Those are not
You're
analogous.
fucking
One
weird, bro.
Oh,
And then they're
yeah,
gonna walk
100%. But those are not analogous because one is clearly someone searching for some amount of like human interaction or like compensating for a lack of human interaction with a like
sure.
pseudo form of that, and then one is fucking an animal. So it's like obviously a little bit different.
Well, it doesn't have to necessarily be their sexual kink, but it probably is.
I don't
most
think.
of the
I
time
don't think
it
the
is,
average.
right.
I think the average
Most of the
person will
time
think
it
it's
is,
weird.
yeah.
I don't think the average person is gonna like engage in conversation, like and like try to debate them out of it. That's
Yeah,
what
I'm just saying, like, I don't think, I mean, like, yeah, people accept things because they don't know somebody because they don't want conflict, right? But, like,
Yeah.
I don't think most people are going to be, like, a lot of people aren't going to shame someone that comes into your Discord and says, I like crinkling, right? Not because they think that it's totally normal and that's just their thing, but
What's crinkling?
Instead, they're
I look it up now.
crinkling. If you want to look up what happened at the
not
last
looking
furry
it up.
festival, it's when people intentionally shit in their diapers and then walk around,
Oh,
right? And then
God.
it's crinkling, right? Like if someone tells you I'm into
That should be
crinkling,
shamed.
right? Like you should shame them, but that doesn't mean
I
everybody's going to
don't.
shame them because some people don't want conflict. Like that's not necessarily like. You know
This
what I
is
mean?
ex-
Like,
But
Wait,
the thing is, we're also
this-
going to push back against the person who does.
Wait, man,
We're
this
gonna say
is
that, like,
this
leave
is
them alone,
way.
they're not
Hold on.
bothering
if
you, they're a
you
sweet
make
person.
fun of me for making fun of someone for crinkling, I'm also going to make fun of you.
No,
Sure, but I'm
and then we
saying
have
I'm
another-
appealing to like what the average how the average human
Wait.
engages.
I think the average person hears that and does exactly what all of you did once you learned what it was. Whoa! What
Are
the
Like
you-
fuck?
if I started
That was your
bullying
initial
Kilo right
fucking
now
reaction.
for being a Chiefs fan, like if I started shaming him and bullying him for that, I think the rest of the chat, like at first it would be laughing at him like, "Hey, dude, like chill out." Like,
Well,
even though
no. I'm.
Yeah, eventually
I
it would get
understand what
awkward.
you're
It
saying.
would get weird, and then you would kick them out of the Discord or something.
What's
so-
different is that the people who are indicating that their sexual fetish is crinkling or whatever the fuck, they don't choose this, right? Like it's not like a thing that they like. I'm pretty sure most of them probably already experienced shame just having to deal with this in the first place, and like they're just doing the best they
If
can
did,
with
they
it.
wouldn't tell me.
They wouldn't have a word.
I
They
don't
wouldn't have
agree
a
with that.
special word for it if they were ashamed. They'd be going home to change their pants. That's the benefit of
Okay,
shame. They
my
go
question
home
is,
and they
do
change
you
their
think-
pants.
wait,
They
do
are
you
announcing
think-
this to me? That the first thing I learn about them in my Discord, they come into my Discord, and that's the first thing I learn about them is
yeah.
evidence that they are
That's
not
different.
ashamed.
That's
Even if
very
it's not the
different,
first thing,
obviously.
even if it just
But
comes
what
up.
I want to ask: does anyone here actually think that you can shame someone out of a sexual proclivity?
Yeah.
There's no
Probably
way. You,
not.
you just can't.
Wait. So hold on.
You
Yeah, yeah,
can't
you might-
shame-
my husband just said-
Listen,
A behavior.
you can't
yeah.
shame
hundreds of
someone.
years
them into
you
hiding
can't-
it. You can shame them into hiding
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
You can
never
shame
acting
someone
on it.
into repression, which could probably lead to perversion and even worse.
If they're
like,
shitting their
adverse effects.
pants, I would want you to
You
replace
don't-
that. Yes.
No,
You
that's
don't-
hiding it.
Listen,
You can shame people
right,
and
but
then
like-
never acting something out. Like there's legitimately
Look,
more
shit
LGBT
yourself.
people
It's
in,
fine. Shit
in
yourself.
today's
That's
world
great.
than ever before, and it's that's not a bad thing, but it's directly due to acceptance. The reason
do
that
not-
like the idea of like the reason we didn't have more LGBT people 150 years ago is directly because of like religion and shame. Like even if people felt a way, they would never like engage with those ideas or act on them.
Look, we do
In
not.
some
We do not
ideas,
know.
in some
We do
behaviors,
not know.
that's
We do
based.
not know.
There's some behaviors that you
Wait.
never want people to act on.
Fine,
I want
fine.
to shame them so
Let us
much
roll with
that
this.
they never behave in that
Listen,
manner.
listen.
And one
No,
of
no,
those
it's
things-
not about-
one of those
it-
things. To bring it back to the topic,
I
one of
didn't
those things
ask.
is current AI girlfriends and being with a.
I
current
did
Okay.
not
I don't
think
ask
anybody
if
ever
you could
will.
shame
Something
someone.
absolutely
I
not
didn't
want
ask
to
if you could shame someone out of acting on a sexual impulse because I absolutely think that you could. I asked if you could shame someone out of experiencing a sexual impulse.
Listen,
Nope, but I
Caleb,
don't care about
Caleb.
their
Sweet
experiencing.
conversion
Oh
there.
my
everything
God,
in their
you
head.
guys
I care about
don't know what you're
behavior.
talking about. You guys,
Go ahead,
you guys have you guys have like fucking taken opinions that you heard online and you're just repeating them. Like the amount of research on paraphilic disorders and what are interventions that work on paraphilic disorders, and that would specifically be kinks that are like problematic in one's life because that's where we get most. That's where they're usually taboo, right? But they affect their life in some way. They don't necessarily need to be taboo, but they could be affecting their life in such a negative way. Like there's much less taboo, for example, on like sex addicts than there is on like foot fetishes. But a sex addiction can be way more harmful to your life than let's say a foot fetish, right? Like a foot fetish might not actually harm your life.
and they deserve to burn. So go
Right,
ahead.
right, but more like, but people can joke about like, oh, that girl's got a sex addiction. Like, hell yeah, dude, I love me an info. When really, like, their life is being destroyed by it. But nevertheless, like, the amount of research that's available on that is super fucking scant. How they develop, the best evidence we have on that is like sexual imprinting in males, and like a lot of that research comes from like animal research because it's unethical to do
Did you
human
just feel like
research.
telling people how smart you are? I don't know what that relates to anything that's being talked about. We're not
What I'm
saying how
saying
it
is that you
develops.
don't.
We're
You
saying
That
don't know.
1000% relates
You-
to what I was talking about.
What I'm saying is you don't actually know whether or not you can shame someone out of a kink or what level of shame would
It's
be
not about
required,
wanting to
because
that
to do that research would be super fucking unethical. So like we
Right.
don't. So like we do the best we can off of self-report surveys. Like so you don't
We've
actually
run into
know.
this problem.
Well, I'm
I
saying
mean,
that
we
run into
have
this
the
problem
whole
some of
before.
the
HK movement, so we
topology.
have some research and data into this, right?
Yeah, we have some
but
inkling that shame doesn't appear to be that effective, but extreme shame might be, but we don't really know.
Bam, give it a try. But then finish what you were saying. Then I do want to go to Icos with limitations.
Yeah, we do know that like we can prevent people from acting out behaviors. Like that we understand that there's
Well, yeah.
that's to the degree that anyone actually cares. That's like the part that people actually care about.
Yeah, I mean, I could lock every person with a foot fetish that we find into an insane asylum, and like we'll stop it, like from people acting it out. Doesn't necessarily mean that's like good.
Well, no, I mean, no, it's the best thing we could do for fucking humanity. You got to clean up the gene pool. Let's go to friend Ico.
Yeah, so I think everything that we've been talking about for like 30 minutes is kind of proving that this AI thing might not be such a unique moral hazard after all, because we keep coming up with examples of things that are happening that don't require AI at all. You know, the parasocial relationships, like otaku in Japan. I think the first one of the things I thought about early on was like the novel, like Don Quixote, like by Cervantes, right? Here's a character who becomes who he becomes because he retreats inside of books and is pretty much like has lost the ability to like have
See reality,
realistic
yeah.
like human relationships with people around him, and that's like, you know, was written centuries ago. Or more recently, like Simon & Garfunkel, "I Am a Rock," right? It has lyrics in it about somebody who sort of retreats. He says, "I have my books and my poetry to protect me," right? I think these are all like very familiar concepts. We all grew up knowing people like this and understanding that these sorts of risks can happen. So now we're talking about something that's maybe a little more interactive, but I think this is sort of, you know, human nature. Somebody can write a set of 154 sonnets, and then, you know, millions of people around the world across centuries falls in love with the, you know, that poetic voice. Like I don't think the moral hazard is all that much, you know, certainly not unique.
Oh,
That's
I'm sorry.
super
I know I
interesting,
just said a
Ico.
lot, but I remember the other thing I wanted to say. Would we have an issue with asexual or aromantic people just like engaging in video games? Like the time they would have spent engaging with a relationship, they decided like, oh, actually, I just prefer playing video games.
That's for Wick.
Yeah, that's a problem. That's a problem, right? And I think there's a lot of
They're
hedonistic,
asexual.
right? There's a lot of.
Why? Are you serious?
Why is
I
that a
didn't say not have
problem?
friendships, but I'm saying that
Yeah.
like
No,
Wait,
because
no, they're
when you say
asexual.
relationships, right? When you say relationships, that includes friendships. That includes close communication. Like even okay. When I say
Hold on.
relationships, I
Okay,
do
hold
not
on. Let
mean.
me
you know
shortcut
how it was
what you're trying to
defined.
say. I know what you're getting at. Let me shortcut that. Okay, so he's saying aromantic, meaning they don't want romantic relationships. They're not interested in that. But let's say they're still interested in friend relationships. So just take the time that they would have spent with a partner and then replace that with video games.
It
Go.
would still be better to replace that with friendships, right?
But we're saying they already have
Absolutely.
friendships.
They need more.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. I'm saying that they already have friendship. They have friendship time, and then they have romantic time, but they don't want the romantic time. So that time is now video game time.
Because their
Like,
friends have romantic relationships. Their friends like are off with their girlfriend. They can't spend 24/7
This
with their
is
friends.
odd
You know what,
to
Bam?
me.
Bam,
The
you're
reason-
right.
Wait, just let
because,
Wick answer it though.
Girls,
Yeah.
Girls will drag
Wick.
your ass to a farmer's market in a heartbeat.
That's true.
The reason this is odd to me, right, is because
Son.
I don't
Son.
segregate my time like that. I don't have specific. Oh, this is romantic time, and this is friendship time, and this is
Come
other
on,
time,
Wick.
right? I
Come
don't.
on. You
I
know what
don't.
we're doing here, right? Like, there's a certain amount of time within that day. Sometimes they mix. Yeah, sometimes you hang out with your girlfriend, with your friends, right? And it gets weird because
Girlfriend's gonna be pissed if you like spend all of your if you never spend
yeah,
time with
yeah.
each other. Yeah.
Obviously, you'll have alone time, right? We're replacing that alone time with video game time. Answer the question
Do I think that there's a problem?
for a romantic person.
In this very narrow, like, idea, no, I don't think there's a problem. But the problem is that most people aren't this, right? And so for those specific people, maybe not. But for people as a whole, in general, it's absolutely a problem.
But I'm just wondering, like, if like we create a future where
I think
people
it's even
like,
a problem with that
oh,
example.
I'm not, I may not be aromantic, but I'm like robosexual. Like I only like I prefer AI, and that's how
Robosexual is a problem.
I like to. That's how I want to spend my romantic time.
That's I think that's
There was like a
robosexual.
Love,
Did we
Death,
just
and
coin
Robots
it?
episode about that, I think, actually.
It's going to be something way more PG. It wouldn't be called Robo. It's probably going to be
Who
like
didn't see
automated.
RoboCop and thought that guy should get it? Come on.
He
that
should be
shiny
fucking-
middle ass, he can get it.
Oh, come on.
We're going to grant them
So
some level of
you're
humanity.
saying you love cops now? PrimeCayes loves cops. Got it.
If they're
Once-
replaced
once
with
they
AI.
are digitized and I can control them completely, yes, indeed,
Yep.
I actually would be in love with. But yeah, let's. Lactate. Please follow that up with the cogent statement.
Where I think about if it's a problem with if you have somebody who like in this section of their life that's like dedicated to romance, they replace that with just video games. Why that? I think that'd be a problem.
Yeah,
I mean,
in this case, it was specifically aromantic individuals, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think what Wick's original statement was like, if that time is spent doing like more productive things or like that's preferable, right? Like when engaging in any kind of vice or time wasting activity generally isn't like a good thing, right? I think when you're out like making friends or you're like learning like an actual like marketable skill, like for some people that might be video games, but we're talking very narrow subset of the population at that point.
They've got a good job. They make good money.
For especially in the type of video game matters as well. No, I don't think that for a lot of people, like if I don't think this is good for a lot of them, and I think that for the vast majority of people, the only people who are actually going to like think this are people who have sort of like self-deluded themselves into, well, I don't need that. I got video games. I'll be fine. I don't think this is the case for anybody, unless maybe again like one person out of a billion who like genuinely like reportedly gets more life satisfaction instead of like going out and experiencing the world, sitting at home and fucking playing cookie clicker for 20 hours a day. Maybe they actually are happier doing that. I don't think so.
You don't
You're
think people are
projecting a little bit.
like you don't believe that's a real thing, or you don't believe that people enjoy spending time indoors?
I think that overall, right, even if it's spending time indoors, I think people who spend more time engaging in time wasting activity are less satisfied overall with their life.
So how do we consider big streamers? Like insert like I'm gonna bring them up. Like I imagine in 99% of worlds, Destiny is considered like a basement loser. Like, but he happened to come into an industry where he doing what he does makes him a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that like because so he made the money and he still seems to enjoy like, oh, I'm in my room, I'm in the dark, I make like money to go travel all across the world.
I can't speak for
I just wanna do
specific
that.
individuals, but I can speak on a whole. And on a whole, people are much less happy, right? Like we have huge spikes in loneliness, huge spikes in depression, huge spikes in mental illness. These are all problems. Now I can't point to a single cause. I'm not that smart, right? I don't know, right? But something is going wrong.
You'd probably be wrong even if you did.
Also, even by the way, but these like streamers, like even they like they're not basement dwellers, right? When they like
I think they would be.
When they get like financial like momentum, they like fly out places and meet people and do meet and greets and go to conventions. Like that's what they do. Like they spend a tremendous amount of time doing that because it's what leads to life satisfaction.
But if you ask them, they always say they hate that part. Like so, like they always say like,
Destiny's
oh god, I feel like so
Let's
social.
be
And
real.
they're not even just Destiny. Like I insert big streamer here. Hassan talked about it. Vaj talked about it. They say that like the going out and doing stuff actually leaves them super like
They're fucking liars.
emotionally drained.
Well,
and like
Awash is like
believe it.
like not. I don't think autistic. Maybe he has some. He's neurodivergent in some way. And he doesn't like social context. So specifically for him, at the very least, it's probably true.
You think
Oh
Destiny
God,
likes
I'm
social contact?
neurodivergent.
Oh,
Yeah. Great Vox impression.
Scott, you're better than that. But okay.
But I mean, like, Hassan's like super, like, you would think like, oh, this is super outdoors
It's
guy.
not
But
even
I
a
mean,
Vox
like, I hate
impression.
going places, bro. Like, he's
It's
like,
just
he
hilarious
just said
that-
he wants to send
I
his
have
house out
never looked at Hassan and thought he was a super outdoors guy. I have never once thought that. I just don't. So.
Doesn't he have like a mansion with a bunch of strippers or some shit? Like, look what these people do when they get money. They're not like, again, sitting in their basement.
Yeah, I'm saying there could be strippers in the basement. It's still in the basement.
Not in the
Like,
basement.
it doesn't
They're
make
in the pool, the
it's still at
backyard. They're not,
home.
he's not down there like sweating the basement, like line up my hook. No, he's not doing that. We know he's not doing.
He's not Chris D'Elia.
Lactoid to notify your
Nice.
prosecutor friends. Hooker in the basement. No good.
It'd be weird if he kept him in the basement, wouldn't it?
I don't know. I just feel like it's a difference of personality type because I know a lot of like the coders as well. Like they don't like they like, oh, you make this money, but like they make this money to like spend on video games and like enjoy their close personal friends, but they don't want to be with like big social interactions.
And their collectibles.
I mean, and well, there was just a news story today
Funko
about a guy who he was a big coder, actually, like very successful, like Cash App, I think he invented, or one of those things, and he got murdered.
He got stabbed.
Yeah, he got like repeatedly stabbed. But like that caused an investigation to his life, and he was like living the sex, drugs, and rock and roll lifestyle. He like every day was to its fullest, right? Even though he was like fucking his ex-girlfriend's sister, whatever, right? But he was having a good time. But like I think that these things are kind of overstated as to like my problem with you and Wick, my problem is that like this idea of things not being optimal as you define it, right? Like one, I don't. There's no problem for me with people like living suboptimal lives, and I don't want to necessarily shame them for it, especially if not harming other people. So I'm putting that out there. But beyond that, for you to define like what is optimal, and so like you're saying that like economic advancement is necessarily like more optimal. A person can be comfortable within their lives and then decide, you know what, I'm going to play fucking video games of all my free time, right? That is the thing that I like, and that's what gives me the most joy, and that's okay. Let them do that, right? I know you wouldn't restrict anyone. I know you wouldn't restrict anyone.
Yeah.
But like that's fine. There's no need to shame a person for doing that, and for you to decide, well, like you should be gaining some skill or like meeting these other random people out in the world, right? That is better. So says I. That's what I reject, and that's probably what makes me a fucking progressive.
So people can have different like. I guess categories of what they're or different, I guess parameters is a better word, of what they define as optimal. And obviously I'm going off of what I define as optimal. I'm making prescriptions not only for my own life, but what I think other people should do.
Yes,
and
go ahead.
And for both my own life and other people, the basis of my prescription is the same, right? Exercise elevates mood. It's a scientific reality, right? You're healthier, you live longer, you're less of a burden on the health system, you're more productive, right? These are just factually true. And so when I'm thinking about, okay, but what are the things that those are things that I value, not only for myself, but I want other people in society to value those as well and to do that. And so I think it's good to have social prescriptions that sort of align with at least, there's other things too, but for this specific thing, being healthy. And so what does being healthy involve? Exercising, going outside every once in a while, touching grass, right? This is important. At least according to my prescriptions.
I wouldn't mandate any of this. Yeah,
right,
I wouldn't
exactly.
I wouldn't mandate any of this. And look, we all have our vices. I have my vices that are suboptimal and things like that. It isn't like this judgment on character that you think are going.
You literally have been judging people on this. Like
we
you
all
literally
judge
say, I'm
people,
going to
and
shame
that's
them.
you
advocate for shaming.
Yeah. What? You judge people
respectful
as
shaming.
well, right? Everyone judges
not
people.
shaming,
If you say you don't judge people, you're lying.
No one's saying we don't.
When somebody
judge
lights
people.
up a cigarette next to you, do you judge them at all? Do you think like, wow,
no,
would they be better off if they didn't do that?
No, I don't think anyone's arguing that you don't shame or judge people on a regular basis. Of course, it's like a defense mechanism. Yes, naturally.
Yeah, I didn't say that. I'm saying
That's
Yeah,
a good
yeah.
example of shaming working as
I
societal.
They're
That's
just
no,
optimizing their
no, no,
life.
no,
a
no, no,
huge
no.
example.
I hear you. I hear you. Right. I'm saying that specifically. Well, maybe I'm not saying that. But for now, when we're the issues that we talked about, like having this an AI girlfriend or deciding that you want to play video games, that those things certainly aren't harming anyone. And for things like that, where you have decided to shame them, I'm saying that is a step too far, right? Yes, we can find other things within society, right? If you're going to be a murderer, right? If you're going to kill people, I'm going to kill pets. That's fine. But if you're going to kill people, then then
No,
Whoa,
pets are
what?
that
someone's
would be a thing
property.
that I would want to shame you for. Okay, right? Yes, we can draw lines in the sand. I'm saying this is not one of them. It shouldn't be one of them. And the things that you're saying make these things problematic or imaginary, or at the very least just exist in your head, and you shouldn't project that out into reality. So Corey, you want to say something quickly?
Wait, to respond to that, of like, so I'm, I get this, I guess, changes potentially based off of country, as in like, me and Lactoid are Canadians, where it's like, given what you've outlined, Prime, in terms of like, in your hyper individualistic like society where, you don't have a public health system,
Hey, no,
presumably, yeah, you would have no issue of like if a person is just like literally,
sorry.
a person is an island, they're going to their job, they're making money, and they're just like going back home or whatever, doing remote work, and they're just like whatever, just sedentary 24/7, and like whatever, they're just leading unhealthy lifestyle. Like that's I guess potentially not problematic, like if they're just like literally not interacting with anybody. But I would say that
Tragic.
potentially changes. As in, like, if they're living here in Canada and doing that, and they're whatever, they're not taking themselves seriously and they're smoking.
Just send them
I,
to Mage, right?
I would. That's a separate topic, Wick, that I don't think you're equipped to talk about. But
I promise you I am.
in public health, but if you're in Canada and you're not taking your health seriously, like, yeah, I would make the prescription. Like, I would prefer you take your health seriously because, like, yeah, there's a societal cost to that. But like, yeah, in the United States, if you're just like not interacting with anybody, you're just like doing your job and staying at home doing nothing, and being unhealthy, I guess there is technically nothing wrong with that. I would personally consider that sort of not. I wouldn't put that as human flourishing, but it is functional and not hurting anybody.
Just this idea that just because something isn't hurting anyone, that it's okay. I think it's just false, because people
It
are
is
doing
okay.
self-harm,
True.
and that's a problem. Because I care about others, and I don't want them to hurt
Wait.
themselves.
No, you don't.
If someone isn't
I don't
living
care about
life
others. I
to
just
the
think-
utmost, like upper echelon of potential, the most optimal
This
in your
hypothetical
mind.
he gave was not even close to maybe just being a little suboptimal.
Okay, we're
It
at
was someone
50.
who
We're at
didn't interact.
50% capacity. They're fine with their existence. They're not the most physically healthy individual. They don't have a lot of like, satisfying, fulfilling personal relationships. They're kind of okay with it. They're not harming anyone else. They don't take up too much space. What are we saying? What's the prescription that we're making there?
in my society. Like I'm not even gonna put it on like.
Seems like they're
I
not.
care about. Like I don't want certain type of people. Like
It seems like
influencing
they're not
society.
really influencing society if they're just
I think it
playing
is
Factorio.
So what is right?
because we have to
right?
shape the world.
Right. If I was to give my opinion here, right, is there's a difference between justifiable use of force against somebody, right? You know what I mean? If someone's living their own life and they're not harming anybody, I can't justify any aggression towards them. But that being said, when I look at their life, right, what is right at that point is a pro-life position that is selfishness for myself. The most moral thing you can do is be selfish. Selflessness is evil. Altruism is evil. But that being said, when I look at someone that is engaged in an incredibly negative way in their life, right, at a certain point, based upon my values and what I value about myself, it becomes in my own rational self-interest to not want to live in a society with people that are utterly failing in some regard. And so the amount of energy that I expend to go to that person and be like, hey, man, do you need some help? Do you need someone, or whatever it is, in order to attempt to change their behavior is based off my own rational self-interest. Corey, though he does it through a statist perspective, a rape apologist perspective, right? He makes this analogy in the sense that it's different in Canada because in Canada, it is a financial burden to him if someone is unhealthy, whereas in a country that has more private insurance, it's less of a financial burden, right? So really what we're talking about is rational self-interest when looking at another person. So yeah, it actually does matter how much their life is being ruined by their own destructive choices, right? Because at a certain point, those destructive choices have an effect on the world that I live in and have an effect on my community. And so like when someone is, working just below suboptimal, it likely has no negative effect on me whatsoever. And so I don't feel any rational self-interest to like present to them, hey man, you could be doing better. But if someone's doing horribly, it eventually gets to a point where it's for my own betterment to attempt to help them, both to make me feel good, both to make my community better, to make my, the place that I live better, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to live in a community with like that. Like if you had
heroin addicts everywhere,
you could find
right.
easily afford. Yeah, if like 10% of your community was like heroin addicts, like even if they never offered it to you, I think most people would like.
Yeah, it would still be in your best interest to try and fix this problem.
We're talking
it would have an
reason.
effect on you. You would have
What do you
less
consider within
opportunity, right? Even small, right? Like if a majority of a city is living like this,
If
there's less
it's
interactions overall. There's less chances for those who want to be extroverted. There is a cost.
If
And
you
we can't pretend
identify
it's
the
not.
smallest little butterfly effect.
Just very quickly. What are you, Kilo? Just very quickly. Guys, we are in bonus time, so we're past 11:30 p.m. Eastern, right? So like, if anyone needs to just drop out, like, don't think I'm holding you here. Thank you for sticking around so far. But if you want to continue
Eventually
on,
I'll get hungry.
We will. Kilo.
If you identify whatever the tiniest little shred of butterfly effect that someone's negative personal choices might have on society, and say that that's the reason why it's immoral for them to behave this way, then okay, like Scott, in your case, you cease to be a libertarian. Like you've kind of abandoned your prescription, your entire moral like value system. I think
you don't understand libertarianism enough to make that claim. Sorry, you're talking out of your ass.
If we're going to say that,
I'm talking about Randian philosophy at this point, objectivism, right? And the idea that one ceases to be a libertarianism because what I talk about in my own moral preferences while still withholding to the prescription of the non-aggression principle is objectivism, which is a philosophy that was born from both Murray Rothbard and her together before they split up and are damn near 1-to-1 ratios with slight differences, is fucking hilarious. Like, just move on to your next point because you're out of your element, boy.
Here's and maybe a nicer way to explain it, Kilo, would be libertarians are perfectly fine making prescriptions for other people because you have the freedom to do what you want, but we also have the freedom, right? We have the freedom of speech to tell you what we think you should do. We just can't make you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Great.
So
don't smoke.
Was there a second part of that?
No, that's it.
No, I was talking about Kilo. Like I know you.
Yeah.
Was that the end of it or?
I don't remember.
You don't remember what you're talking about. Basically, yeah, you were talking. I brought up the heroin addict example, and you said that like
I got schooled in libertarian theory, and I forgot what my fucking point was. It's fine.
Yeah, you got.
I'm okay
with
it,
brother.
No, I mean I'm gonna lose that battle 10 times out of 10.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna say something.
Oh, just then, I guess sort of in response to that, like. I do believe that like I don't know how we can differentiate between the two things. Like if we see someone, I guess it depends on if it's something that you can that you can visually like notice. If you notice like if it's something that like you can't recognize to the human eye, like if a guy goes into his house and he like punches his wall, like it's probably not a healthy thing to do, but like if it's not like if I don't know what's happening, probably don't care. But like if there's I assume things related to like drug addicts, things are related to like, oh, okay, this person has a relationship with this like this thing on his phone, and when he speaks to me, he wants me to respect it. Like, hey, can you like I want their pronouns are she her, and her name is
if people are completely functional drug addicts, right? Like they exist who use cocaine or whatever it is. I'm not a drug guy, but like if there were people who are completely functional, would I shame them for that? I'm like struggling for a reason why I would. But like,
yeah, no,
would I shame them?
There was no downside to drugs, that would be fine. But I just don't think there's always downsides.
There's no such thing as a functional drug addict. They're just 1 or 2 really bad days away from being like all the other ones, right? Like they're barely holding it together. Like if someone's legitimately an alcoholic or like a cokehead or a meth head or a heroin addict, like Like they're just a bad day away from just turning fully into that.
I hear you. Okay, fine. So I accept that. But like,
Where do
if
you
they
draw
are,
your line?
like, you can use alcohol, right? If a person is hasn't reached that point, hasn't had those bad days, like why should I step in there? Like if as far as I know, they are accomplishing everything they need to accomplish, their family is secure, all those good things, then like
You shouldn't if it's
seems
against
odd
your
that I
rational self-interest.
would shame them. No, I'm saying once they've gone past that point, right? When they've
Mhm.
had those 1 or 2 bad days, then I say, okay, well then I would intervene. But before then, right? Like then because they're like alcohol, I think is a really good example because there's a large spectrum of people who
Yeah, some people can drink
drink
really
alcohol, like
heavy.
along that line of engagement with alcohol. And there are people who are who are farther down there who have like I don't know, a few beers like per night. And like it seems odd to me, but like I'm not going to impose upon them if you're a completely functional person. The
No,
problem
see,
comes when there is a collapse, when there actually is a problem. Like I can't judge like the exact amount of alcohol that is just too much, right?
this
When
is the
everything is
disease.
working.
This is the disease of altruism, collective philosophies, and statism, right? Is that you're having difficulty separating the idea of like judgment and one's own rational self-interest and moral oughts versus the usage of force or the usage of impeding upon someone's life in some meaningful way. What you should do with someone that is a functioning alcoholic is act in accordance with both non-aggression and your own rational self-interest. So if it's a stranger, you probably should stay the fuck out of it because it's none of your business and it doesn't affect you. But if it's your brother, it doesn't matter that he hasn't broken yet because you care about him. You love him. You're connected to him. Your children look up to him. He's your uncle and you know that he's standing on a knife's edge and you care. And once he falls off that knife's edge, it's not only going to ruin him who you care about, it's going to hurt you. It's going to hurt your children. It's going to hurt your family. It's going to hurt your friend group. It's going to hurt your mom because that's her son, etc. And so you step in earlier based upon your own rational self-interest because that is what you prefer. Now, if you're a type of person who like is a multi-millionaire and like what you care deeply about is philanthropy, you might actually get engaged with the stranger because you care about the stranger and that's what you want to spend your time, your money, and what's going to make you feel good is to be the person that saved the most lives from the disease of alcoholism because your brother actually 10 years ago died. Like what is important is what is important to you, to your own values. What's not important is using force. What's actually unjustifiable is using force to impose those values upon other people and then assuming that like that works. And that's where the disconnect is occurring because you don't want to do that. So you're trying to take this
my problem
approach.
is there's shame. Do you consider shame to be force?
Not if it's a voluntary interaction.
Well, but who volunteer? I mean, there are some people who volunteer to be shamed. Okay, right? There's an OnlyFans for that too. Like
if someone comes into my Discord server, right, and I shame them, it's not force. Like it's my fucking Discord server. You choose to be here. You choose to live by the games of however I structure.
Sure. But like, I hear you. I hear you there. But like the shame that we use against LGBT people. Right? Like
there's no such thing as collective shame. That's my issue is I wouldn't collectivize shame, right? Like, so I think you might be thinking about like society at large and multiple individual interactions and how they affect people over time. And we look at that as like a shame that is harmful to a community. And I would say that I wouldn't collectivize it. I would look at it in individual encounters.
Okay. So I feel like you know where I'm going with this though. Like I'm talking about like a parent who is shaming their kid. And not the rest of society, right? Because the rest of society doesn't know, but they're shaming their kid, charmed on the repressed fact that they're gay.
Yeah, that's harassment, right? Like it's a parent's guardian to recognize their child as an emergent adult and establish to the best of their capacity what it is that their will be and protect them in that endeavor. A parent that's constantly shaming their child for their sexuality is someone that is engaged in repeated harassment towards a child that can't consent. And like that's an extremely bad parent. Like that is someone that's
call that aggression. You would call that aggression.
What if somebody wants to be a heavy drinker?
Yeah. Well, I would say I don't know if it technically is aggression, more so as it's forestallment of their guardianship rights, and anyone else that is able to be a better guardian can step in and maintain that guardianship.
If they're 18 plus, but like they live at home, there's all kinds of like I feel like you understand what I'm trying to
the
get
point.
to.
I don't know why
like,
you're going. Yeah, you know what he's
this is not
pointing at.
You know, this is not a complicated question I'm asking you. Like an adult.
I'm legit trying to answer.
I know you're trying your best, but still, like an adult who's being shamed by other people in their lives. And yes, they could move to another state. They could do that, but for whatever reason, they aren't, right? Maybe that's where their support system is or whatever the fuck, right? And they're experiencing shame for something about them, right? Undefined. Could be gay, could be whatever. They're experiencing shame. Is that aggression?
Again, it comes down to an individual interaction.
No.
And if the individual interaction is voluntary, right, then it's not aggression. Like you might consider it morally wrong, right? And I'm with you, right? Like I consider it morally wrong, for example, for a shopkeep to put up a sign that says no Mexicans allowed. I look at that and think that's disgusting, it's creepy, it's racist, and I don't like it. But it's not a form of aggression to choose not to associate with a specific group of people. In fact, it is a form of aggression that the United States government, via the Civil Rights Act, doesn't allow them to do this.
Okay, all right. I'll just leave that there then.
I was with him so long on this panel, and then he says shit like that, and I cannot stay with you.
Yeah,
I know. That's the problem with consequentialists, right? Like you test their principles, and eventually they fall apart.
I don't.
Not all consequentialists.
So like, I don't know the line. So let me just state my point where I was trying to get to.
What I was trying to identify.
Yeah. What me?
I was trying to identify the line, right? So at what point is there a negative enough ramification of someone's effect on society for living hedonistically where you feel like in your rational self-interest you are justified in intervening?
I mean, I'm like,
what do you mean justified in intervening? I'm never justified in intervening in terms of coercion or aggression against somebody.
Well, I mean, like
intervening, like choosing to. That's different. Like,
I just think that like it's each person is going to draw that line for themselves, and it's always going to be at the wrong place, like because that's the subject of being human. Like I'm pretty anti-alcohol. I don't drink. I think it's weird when other people drink, but like as a normal person who's been socialized in society, went to college, has friends, like a lot of my friends drink heavy, and I'll never like bring it up. But yeah, I do judge. Like if I was creating a society, yeah, there wouldn't be alcohol.
Well, so the answer is like the level of shame and the low level of judgment just needs to match like the level of disruption that whatever is having in somebody's life. You know, if somebody is spending an hour a week with an e-girl, like maybe like a little bit of shame, right? But not like a ton. But if someone's spending 8 hours a day, well, now we're ramping that up, right? Because it's a bigger problem. It's a bigger disruption. Same thing with alcohol.
Every Amaranth stream always. I never miss a day.
Exactly, right?
It's like, God damn.
Anyone want to do the math real quick? How much is $1 a minute at 8
hours?
Oh my!
I'm sure it's a ridiculous amount of, and you see, I mean, but people spend on like, OnlyFans and e-girl. I mean, the money fucking adds up. That's money that they could be using to improve their life. And I think it's the same thing when it comes to like drinking. It's a little bit predatory, exactly. And drinking, for example, like 1 or 2 drinks a day.
$480.
Like that could be something to like, hey, maybe you're better off if you didn't do that, right? Maybe like something small like that. But as opposed to, wow, you're going through like, 2 1.75 liters jugs of Jack Daniels every day.
Is that $400 a day?
480.
Is that $480 a day? Man, gang, you have to sub to Prime much more to feed his addiction, okay? He's going to need a lot more than you're giving him to keep him on his juice, okay? So if you care about him, and if you think this is a morally neutral or good thing, then you need to sub to Prime and give him money.
Even your position of like 1 or 2 drinks a day, like that sounds insane to me that you drink every single day, 365 days a year. Like I'm not saying you, but I'm saying that like that.
Well, I
I'm
do
saying
it,
that, like,
and you can shame me. You should. I shouldn't do it.
You should not. Whoa,
Corey, you're shaming me. Look at that. Oh,
no,
you can't do that. It's against the rules.
I'm absolutely not doing it. I want to be. Yeah, absolutely. I will absolutely attempt to kill you with kindness. But like, so you're using this word, lactoid, and that's what I actually do want to understand and drill down, because like you're advocating for like whatever scaling up the shaming or some sort of spectrum of shaming. Like, how are you understanding like shaming? Because all the examples that you gave, it basically it doesn't seem like you understand like the difference between shame and guilt. As in all the examples that you outlined of like, hey, maybe you shouldn't do that, that's unhealthy. That more falls in line of guilt as opposed to shame. Just want to point that out. And that all
Wait,
Yeah,
wait.
no
If you
one,
make
no one
How do you differentiate
colloquially.
between those?
Hold on, pause. No one colloquially uses the term shame the way that psychology researchers do. Like, don't
I'm
get it.
aware of
Don't
that.
get it. Yeah, like don't get stuck on how psychological research is conducted in terms of shame, because it's just going to make the ability to communicate this like basically not work.
I'll explain what I mean. What I mean when I'm talking about shame is, somebody is doing something, a behavior, is doing some kind of behavior that you find distasteful for one reason or another, and you try to socially disapprove of that behavior in a way that hopefully makes the other person feel bad or feel isolated if they engage in that behavior. That's what I'm using here. Right. So, for example, when you're drinking, I'm not going to hang out with you. Great,
Yeah,
great example of shame.
that just generally speaking, at least, yeah, as Scott outlined, that doesn't fall in, let's say, when you talk about shame in a research context or an academic, that's not shame. That's all.
Okay. All right.
That's not how I took
This
it
isn't
either
a
when the idea
panel
was
of
presented.
this isn't a panel of cognitive psychologists. That's all I'm getting at. It's like,
Well,
I'm
I'm
with
not
you,
a
I
cognitive
understand what you're
psychologist, and I
saying,
didn't
but,
take
like,
it that way.
Okay, hold on, Corey. What do you mean when you say shame? Maybe you can bridge the gap here for me.
Yeah, well, I would go with sort of the academic definition, because that's why, like, when people say that
And what is it?
that they're against shaming, usually comes from a place of like, you are bad, as in you as a person, you are defective, you are bad, or you are immoral, and therefore you cannot change. As opposed to like guilt, it's like, yeah, the behavior is bad, but you as a person are still not bad, as in you're still
So
good.
you would say that
I don't think that's a
academically.
useful
So
definition.
you would say academically it would be impossible to shame activity.
Yeah, academically, well, it depends on how you use it in terms
Like,
of like,
look,
since you're
I'm
smoking,
shaming
you
drunk
are bad.
driving. Is that even a thing that you can do, or do you just shame drunk
It
drivers?
depends on how you do it.
All right.
If you say
Shaming
being
a person
drunk,
for engaging in gay sex, though, right? You could do that, right?
Yeah,
no,
Shaming-
no,
shame
no.
gay people for butt fucking.
So if it depends on how you do it, this is a nuanced conversation. If you say, hey, drinking excessively is unhealthy, then that is not shaming. If you say, hey, you're a bad person because you drink, that is shame.
That's the academic.
I think shame is
okay.
yeah. So shame
That's-
is specific to like an internal experience.
So what do
that
we
you're
call
having.
it? Guilting? I'm guilt tripping.
which-
Is that what it'd be?
That's what I
was
want to
kind of
get
using shame the way Corey was using it, really, I think.
If you say like, so to use your example, Prime, of like, hey, yeah, if you engage in whatever anal sex, you are a bad person or immoral, that is shame. If you say, well, engaging unprotected anal sex results in maybe potential negative health
What
outcomes,
if I
that's
say?
guilt.
What if I say that I love you, but you're still going to burn in hell because you're gay? Is that technically shame? But I love you. I think you
that's
are.
guilting.
I think so.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
that would not be
I'm
shaming
only shaming
academically.
the act, not the. I hate the sinner, not
You're
the
just-
sin, not the
yeah,
sinner.
you're just guilt tripping. So Corey, if that's the academic
Oh, that's-
definition of shaming, I will never shame anybody my entire life.
That
Because
definition
for me,
is
Well,
totally-
I mean,
for me, I am
definitionally, the
only
difference
focused
is
on action, never the person.
definitionally the difference is guilt. Shame has a social component. So if it's shame is guilt, but socially. So you can like feel guilty about something you do, but that's just like within yourself. But if you're worried about what other people think, that's shame.
We
Well,
did
that's
kind of
not what
identify.
Corey said, though.
Right.
Well, we did kind of
Worrying about
identify
what
that.
other
That's what I mean. Is that
to a
like
certain degree is
there are
based.
multiple definitions, and
we did kind of
Corey's
identify
using the
that if
academic
someone
one.
was saying that they wanted to make fun of or mock someone for participating in one of the behaviors we were talking about, that was shame.
Yes,
So
I will
agree
shame
with-
you if you come into my Discord. It will be funny, and we'll all have a good time.
Yeah,
Okay,
if
so
I
that's
mock somebody for like driving drunk, like like is that shaming? So I would say okay, for any reasonable term, this is shaming. We're shaming you.
Yeah.
We're shaming you for drunk
No,
driving, right?
That's fine.
I
That's fine.
understand colloquially the way, but like that's why it's difficult of like when we come to like prescriptions of like, let's say, how do we deal with people that are struggling with their weight and the whole concept of fat shaming. Well, if you look in the academic literature and the academic literature in terms of like consensus, like, yeah, fat shaming not effective, well then we have to use the terms appropriately and understand what we're talking about. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not gonna shame.
It's kind of funny because Corey like
fat.
kind of exposed the grift that I like wasn't trying to get in on this, right? Is like he kind of exposed the academic grift is that we think of fat shaming or shame as one thing, and then they specifically make it a specific category, which is even more detrimental than what it is that we believe, because fat shaming does work if you're talking about shame the way Lactoid is talking about shame.
No
but they get
way.
to redefine it. They get to redefine it as going, you're a bad person, you fatty fat. Fat people are bad people, and that's their definition of fat shaming. But when you say, hey man, I don't know if that's necessarily the healthiest choice, like I love you, I want you to be good, like that's academically not fat shaming, but what you're talking about when you talk about fat shaming.
Wait.
That
That's
as a
not
category
even.
to
But
call
that, no,
that
but
fat
that, what
shaming.
you just
They
described,
get to
no,
have their
don't
cake
try
and eat it
that.
too,
Don't
just
try
like fat
this
people.
bullshit. Like, yeah, that.
Jesus is why
like,
Jesus warned me
what-
about science. Okay.
No, bullshit. Right? What you just described, Scott, is not fat shaming at all in any sense of the word. Not fat shaming. Saying, oh, I'm just concerned about you, and let's like have a conversation about this. That is
You're
not.
right.
I've been told that that's fat
and then a
shaming.
billion fucking TikTokers will tell you that is fat shaming, and not having
I've been
six-legged chairs is
specifically.
fat
Yeah,
shaming.
yeah.
I've specifically been told that engaging in the type of behavior
You
that
got
Scott thing was absolutely fat shaming. I've been told on this like platform that that's fat shaming. I'm like, you are bullying and fat shaming by denigrating their lifestyle. That's what I've been told that kind of behavior is.
Well, but can anybody really choose their lifestyle like in a hard determinist kind of framework? I mean,
Shut up.
That's
Oh
a
my
separate
God,
channel.
fucking
Determinist.
Fine, you know what?
Oh my
Great,
God,
love it.
fucking
We'll leave
Daniel
it.
Dennett has entered the
Oh
chat.
my God. Yeah, I don't think that was okay. Yeah, it's fine. We'll leave it here.